All right. Well, I knew one of these days I was going to fuck it up. When I set the stream up, I forgot to tell it to use the existing stream that was already set up, so it just created a new stream. So I'm going to, I just dropped the link in the old chat, so hopefully everybody can make their way over here. And then I'm going to get in here into the actual stream and go to the control room.
Do you need to update the Discord?
It posted it actually, since it created a new stream, it automatically posted it in the Discord. So if you're on the King Pill Discord, I don't know why you'd be, I mean, you're listening to me already, so I don't know. But it posted the stream, so I'll just post this here. Watch that link above.
So I ate a whole bag of gummy bears, and I feel kind of sick now. Which there's a lesson in there. That being, it's Wednesday, I should be fasting. So this is why you should fast on Wednesdays, because then you don't eat full bags of gummy bears and feel sick.
Ah, the Lord is teaching you a lesson.
That's right.
All right, let me switch this thumbnail over here. Make sure. Okay. All right, well, we'll give it a few minutes here and see if we can get some people to trickle on in here now after I goobered everything up here.
So we got to vamp for a few minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
Vamp for a few here while I throw the correct link on Twitter.
Been feeling rather morose as of late, Matthew.
Why do you say that?
Why do you think
that is?
I'm in one of these well, I think it started like so not this last weekend, but the weekend prior, I was up north for Memorial Day, up camping, and I was up late. And you know me, I go to bed at like 6 p.m. And I was up late till midnight or later, like 3 or 4 nights in a row being up north. And I think that was kind of what kicked it off, is just like fucked up my sleep.
And
I was just kind of feeling off, and then I got sick, and then I was just like, I don't know, just kind of snowballed. Now I'm feeling rather. I'm in one of my my existential moods again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feeling emo.
Yeah, feeling emo. Yeah.
What do you do when you get into an existential mood like that?
Well, if we go on like 3 or 4 days and it hasn't lifted, which that's kind of what happened here, then usually what I do is we're getting to that point where I have to start bootstrapping it to get myself out of it. Otherwise, it'll kind of like spiral. And I suppose, like, okay, the first thing I do is I clean myself up. Like, maybe I need to shave or I need to take a shower or something. Like, I just do something that's like, starting with me, something that maintains me. and then I clean up my house. If my house is in disorder, or the dishes need to be done or whatever, I just kind of like tidy up, get the environment ordered, because that really does kind of feed your mental shit. And then I try to spend more time outside, or try to go for more walks. Maybe fast for a couple of days. Usually doing those things kind of all in conjunction. Maybe listen to, I don't know, some spiritual podcasts or read some books or something. Like the Lives of the Saints is usually a good place to go. But yeah. There's a handful of things like levers that I pull that kind of, if I do them consistently for a few days, then I stop feeling so emo.
But, are you saying that you're a biohacker?
Yeah, like you mean like jelking?
Well, that's one variant. Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, every day. It's the only thing I do consistently. Not my prayers, not my fasting. I don't hang out with my kids every night, but jelking.
If you guys don't know what jelking is, don't Google it.
Yeah, don't waste your time. Like Brian Johnson or like Dave Asprey, like those kind of guys.
The guys who kind of look like they're slowly becoming vampires.
Yeah, right. Like one of them literally is a vampire. Like he takes blood transfusions from his son, like a psychopath.
Yes.
It is also. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's interesting. He's been sort of trickling around in the circles with like the PayPal mafia guys and Gundo and the like Silicon Valley right-wing tech circles. He sort of plays footsie with that a little bit, which is interesting.
His worldview is atrocious. That guy, there's something really unsettling about him.
Mm-hmm.
It's he wants to live to be like forever or something. Yeah. And Dave Asprey's the same way, where he's like, he wants to live till 180.
I don't like. I would not want to live that long.
I was
for so many reasons.
I was looking through his Instagram, and for somebody who he has all his claims about how he'll sit for like 4 hours beneath a red light, and he's got his yellow, goofy fucking yellow glasses that block all the blue light, and he's takes like a whole pallet of supplements every day and all of that. And I remember there was a picture where he was doing like a what do you call that on Instagram? It's like a short or like a live kind of thing. But on Instagram, Reels maybe, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. He's getting in his like, I don't know, ice cube tank or whatever. But there's a moment where like he has the camera in his hand and he looks down and the lighting catches him bad, and you realize just how like wrinkly he is and how like he's not aging in reverse. But anyway, one of his big things is that he like wants to live to be like 180, 200 years old or whatever. And he's got to be in his 40s now or something like that. In any case, he's looking pretty rough. And all of these guys who are into the biohacking stuff, they all kind of start to look the same, and they look kind of like not human. In any case, they look kind of androgynous, and they get all fucking weird. And one of the comments was like, wow, 180 came quick. It's like, could you imagine being like this like zany billionaire who spends all your money on trying to live forever, and then just like one comment on Instagram? Like these guys have like body dysmorphia to the max.
Oh yeah.
Some guy is just like, oh wow, shit, you already look 180.
Like their entire ethos is motivated by their body dysmorphia. Oh yeah. All right. Well, I think we've finally people have been able to make their way over here to the stream. So before we get into the substance of what we lured you in here with, the title, Randall Carlson and Robert Edward Grant, I wanted to share a little something.
We're going to listen
Yeah,
to emo.
right. We do need to do that music stream and talk about like the the history of
And do you think
Midwestern
we could get
emo.
away? Could we get away with like? How does that work? How does the YouTube? How do the rules work? Are we able to play music?
Oh yeah, it'll just demonetize the video,
Oh, okay, cool.
which most of our videos are at least on limited monetization. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
Which means
cool.
we need you guys to give us more super chats to make up for the fact that that we can't monetize these videos, because the things you guys insist we talk about just get us limited monetization. We're completely beholden to you. If you want your circus monkeys to jump, then you guys got to do your part.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. There's a lot of. I can introduce you all to some very good emo bands.
I have a feeling that the crowd is probably going to turn on you. I would suspect. Maybe I'll be surprised, but that would kind of put you in your element, right?
Yeah, a loser who listens to emo.
Mm-hmm.
Was that what? Yeah.
Yeah, like at war with the crowd. Like, fuck all you guys. You guys don't understand.
No. Yeah, you're all wrong. I'm right. Fuck you.
Yeah. You don't know what it's like to be like me. You don't know what it's like to be the best.
I'm just smarter than all of you. I've got better taste. Like, I'm just refined.
So I think we're gonna watch this video here today.
Shoes, you got your cutoff jean skinnies, your Vans shoes, your flannel, you got your fucking Telecaster, cranking the reverb, open tunings. It's an autumn day, the sun is coming through the clouds, the leaves are all yellow. You're looking at the American football house, like chain smoking on the porch. Oh yeah.
It's a vibe. I think they say it's a whole vibe. I think that's the terminology.
It's a whole vibe.
Yeah. So for those of you who watched who haven't seen our last episode where we talked about Randall Carlson and crazy numbers and schizo shit, you'll definitely want to watch that. You'll probably be fine watching this one even without having seen that, but the video we're going to show you guys today would be even better. If you've got the context of the last episode.
Matt, stop swearing.
Sorry, Colin. Colin says that he's playing chess with his boy, and his boy's yelling at him for listening to cussing videos.
Fuck!
God damn it! So the last stream was kind of like, maybe you'd say it's like volume 1, and then this is volume 2. We've got probably at least maybe 2 or 3 more volumes after this one. And
then we'll move on to something else.
And I think probably the next thing we're going to move on to is Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson is having a transformation right now. It's very interesting watching. You have to watch a lot of long form interviews. I mean, probably I've listened to now 15 hours maybe of long form content from him over the last couple of weeks.
But Matt, his dad was in the CIA.
Oh shit, man! Yeah, he wore a Kabbalah bracelet. So yeah, it's not, nothing else means anything. Parker, we talked about the pyramids in the age of the Earth a little bit in the last episode, and we're probably going to get into it a little bit more in this episode.
I gotta get myself a Kabbalah bracelet.
Yeah, like
no, you know, I'm the kind of guy who likes what would you say? How would you say it? Sending mixed messages.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Like, I'm just totally poisoned by irony.
And like people who reflexively, there's like that segment of people that you just know if you do or say a certain thing, you're going to trigger like an immediate like Pavlovian response. Yeah, I have this compulsive urge to just poke that button.
My guitar strap is like a rainbow strap.
Oh yeah.
And I've got a bunch of stickers all over my guitar case that says I voted today. It's just covered in them.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I ordered a whole roll of those. Well, first, back in 2016, the first and only time I ever voted for Trump, obviously, I stole one of those rolls of I voted today stickers. And then it turns out that I could like get more on Amazon. So I got a whole roll of like 500 of them, and I just started sticking them all over everything.
That's great. So yeah, I think probably the next rabbit hole we go down after this one is going to be Tucker Carlson stuff. But I want to share a little bit of it today because he had a conversation on the Sean Ryan show just the other day, and this was one of the most profound parts of it. I clipped it up and posted it on Twitter, and the way the man's got away with words, and you can tell this is all just kind of coming this is just kind of off the top of the head. He's just speaking really sincerely and authentically. And I don't know if I've heard anybody else more accurately diagnose the state of the existing state of things than him in this here. So we'll listen to this.
So this is from Michael Cummings. If you had to make one statement about who you believe really
Cummings
runs this country, what would it be?
It depends what you mean by who. It's really a class of people. It's the people who are the beneficiaries of our fake meritocracy, the people with the most merit badges, the people who bought into the lie that undergirds the current disaster, which is if you come up through these legacy institutions and gather the degree or the resume, or, you go to whatever, Horace Mann and then Andover and then Yale and then HBS and McKinsey and you go up through whatever, the tokens of achievement that we hand out to a certain class of people, that you will be a wise leader. And that's demonstrably untrue, of course. They've mismanaged all the big things, the things that matter, the economy or foreign policy, and they've destroyed the family too. So really the worst people. So, but it's the product of that system, a group I'm highly familiar with, that have wrecked everything but are still currently in charge. And the struggle between Trump and Biden is not a struggle between two elderly men with different worldviews. No, it's a struggle between classes of people. These are symbols, right? They're not. I mean, they're people, of course. Mm-hmm. But in the case of Trump as a person, Biden is not fully human anymore because he's got dementia. But whatever. I shouldn't say not fully human, but he's not.
Fully functioning.
Yeah, he's not a totally autonomous being anymore. He doesn't have personal sovereignty anymore. But whatever. But it's not even about them. Even if he did, it's not about them. It's about classes of people and who should be running the country. Should it be the people, this leadership class, which really is the product of a quite elaborate grooming system that's come up over the last century, but really accelerated post-war, past 80 years, or like the rest of the people who live here? Should they have a voice too? Should they have any power? So, but that's who's running it. And it's quite a large group, actually. And I grew up, if not in, then certainly adjacent to that group. So I'm quite knowledgeable about it, and I've lived around it, so I know it when I see it, instantly know it when I see it. And I didn't question it really as much as I do now. Now I find it completely repulsive and immoral and really disgusting, actually. But I didn't always feel that way because I didn't fully understand it. But the reason that it's so hard to describe who's really in charge and why people often decide well, it's got to be Bohemian Grove or, some small group of people. The reason that it's so hard to really pinpoint who's making the decisions is because it's quite large and diffuse. It's an entire class of people with similar instincts and similar vested interests in things. And they unfortunately just have an awful lot of power, and they control the monopolies that define our economy.
Do you think that, are these people you're talking about, are they controlling the country or are they controlling the world?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And I don't know if I've arrived at a really clear answer, but it's certainly obvious at this point that borders are overrated, as meaningful distinctions between, do countries matter? No, I mean, globalization was originally conceived as an economic system, a much more efficient economic system where it's cheaper to do one thing in that country, it's cheaper to do this thing in that country, and why don't we just network them effectively, and that'll be a much more efficient economy, and we'll grow GDP, which we claim is an accurate measure of something, I guess, of wealth. It's not, but let's just say that was the thought. But what it turned into, because governance does tend to follow economics, what it turned into was a leadership system. So in other words, what we thought was just like a way to get cheaper electronics from the Far East turned out to be effectively world government. Not, of course, strictly speaking, world government, not officially world government in the way that we people feared 40 years ago. The UN's going to run everything. It's much more informal than that, but much more durable than that.
That phrase there, it's much more informal than that, but much more durable than that. I think that's he's seeing it so clearly. And I think I can't remember if it was earlier in this or if it's coming up. He says that it's he said it's a conspiracy of instinct, which is one of the best ways that I've heard. I've tried to figure this out myself. To what extent are these sort of hive mind things, to what extent are these explicitly engineered? And to what extent is this the product of a certain class of people thinks the same and comes to the same types of conclusions? And it's very clearly, at the very least, it's absolutely the latter. It's absolutely that there is a certain class of people who naturally thinks along certain lines. And so, of course, if they all think the same, they're all going to come to the same conclusion. And so they're all going to behave the same way, whether or not it's being directed from the top down. Which means all it takes is just a little bit of targeted nudges here and there. And people naturally, it's the NPC phenomenon where people just naturally just pick it up and they start just repeating the conclusion you would naturally come to if you're the type of person who thinks and cares about these kinds of things.
So it's a network of businesses, governments, intel agencies for sure, and NGOs that determine what's allowed and what's not allowed. And as someone who travels a lot abroad and has, on and off my whole life, I don't know that it has amounted to much, but I've definitely been a lot of places, as you have. The most noticeable trend, and I traveled a lot as a kid, so I've sort of seen the difference. The most noticeable trend is the homogenization of everything. Everything looks the same. The attitudes are all the same. Everyone has the same, fashionable attitudes that are really top-down delivered. And the world has just sort of lost its differences. There are some exceptions. There are some places you go, I really want to go to North Korea, not because I have any love for this, Stalinism. Of course I don't. I hate it. But I do sort of want to be a place that's a little bit different from other places. Because I actually believe in diversity in the truest sense. Like I think differences are fine. I actually like them. I appreciate them. I think we need them. I think nature creates differences. God creates differences. So I resent the fact that everything is the same. But that is one measure of the power of this class. It's international. It's completely international. So the whole idea of like a sovereign nation.
I remember hearing, what's his name? It was Tommy, I believe. Tommy was talking about how his wife, maybe his wife's relatives or his wife, someone over. Anyway, he has some connection to, I believe, Zimbabwe or South Africa or that region of the world. And they were recounting a story wherein they're walking down the street and they see a Zoomer on his phone in South Africa. And he's like FaceTiming or talking to somebody. And despite the fact that this person's a native of South Africa, they were speaking in a perfect American accent. But it's not even just like obviously there's the institutional push, but it's also just like the cultural. I don't even know what word to use, but it's so dominating.
Yes,
everywhere. That like the younger generations are losing even their. And I mean, this has already happened. I remember hearing Gavin McInnes talk about this on what's his show? What's that guy? Orthodox guy on the Blaze.
James Poulos.
Yeah, James Poulos. He was on James Poulos' show, and he was talking about the breakdown in like regional distinctions and regional cultures and how he thinks this is a bad thing. And he was using the example of accents where you used to have, like, if you went up to the Northwest, he was talking about black people specifically, but you went up to the Northwest and black people used to talk like Jimi Hendrix, kind of like hippies and stuff like that. And then, everyone kind of had their regional accents, and now every black person sounds like they're from the South Bronx. Because that's just kind of the culture that just pervades everything.
Yeah, it's like the default soup for that everyone swims in now is American culture, which is part of the reason why I believe that the idea that the American empire is close to collapsing is becoming more and more preposterous to me the more I think about it. It's very obvious that we're in the ascendancy. Everyone is becoming American. Everyone's not about to stop being American. The only question is, what is America going to be? What is it going to continue looking like? Anyways, that's another show.
Putting one country's interest before another country's, that's like completely alien to the way the leadership class thinks. Completely. If things go to shit here, I'll move to Singapore. And if they, the Chinese do to Singapore what they did to Hong Kong, then I'm in Abu Dhabi. And if things go to shit there, then I'm in wherever the next place is. Do you know what I mean? Baker's Bay, whatever. It's like it's a way of thinking. And it's hard to defeat that,
Yeah. It's, man, it just seems so complicated. And then
but it's a conspiracy of instinct. It's almost like, you saw this with the COVID vax. Like I was watching this and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is everybody saying exactly the same thing? Are there talking points that went out? Well, of course there were actually talking points that went out. And there was a conspiracy to bribe hospitals and churches and all these different groups to stick with the message, the same message. But it was more than that. It was just like a certain sort of person reaches the same conclusion. The people, and really a lot of it's economic. It's like the people who've derived the greatest benefit from American society or global elite society as it currently exists are almost to a person the least productive people in the society. People who loan money at interest. Really? I mean, I guess there's a role for finance, in a society. But tell me how people who loan money for a living should be, the most revered and the most highly rewarded. No, they probably shouldn't be, actually. The people who make things, who innovate in a true sense, who actually improve human life, people who say profound things, create beautiful things, they should be rewarded. So it's all the...
How's that for a sauntering right up to the line. He's got more
But,
coming.
he didn't say it, so he's cucked.
Right, yeah, that's right. He has a little red bracelet, so.
The truth is, the people in charge are the least impressive. They're the least important. If they went away tomorrow, if like, I don't know, Susan Rice and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, is like a freaking moron and a bad person. If she went away tomorrow, would that be bad? Or like, it wouldn't have make any difference. She's never done anything. And so that class of people.
I should get, I've got this this prayer rope that's all black that I just kind of wear around my wrist. I should get a red one.
Yeah, you should. And then display it prominently on every episode.
Yeah. I can just hold my arm up here.
Which is disproportionately benefited from our system, has a lot to lose. A lot. The most to lose. Like if I'm a super competent diesel mechanic, diesel engines are going to be around for a long time. Sorry. You're not going to do long haul trucking on an electric motor. Sorry. Just we're not anytime soon. So if I can fix a diesel engine, my value is demonstrable. Probably not going to be unemployed, actually. But if you're Janet Yellen and you're like an economist who knows nothing about economics and your whole life is getting paid off by the banks, which hers has been, you're not really needed, actually. You're a net drain on society. And so someone like that has a lot to protect. Like a lot. Like the whole edifice of bullshit could just come crashing down on her, right?
Yeah.
So she's a lot jumpier than your average diesel mechanic.
Why do you think, I mean, you're talking about, how old is Janet Yellen? She's got to be
several hundred years old, I think. Janet Yellen, who's like a criminal, and she literally was fed and she took payoffs from the banks, really, for speeches.
Why aren't they, people like her, people like Pelosi, people like Mitch McConnell, why don't they hit this point where they go, I'm going to enjoy all of the corrupt money that I've accumulated over the 80 years that I've been doing this? Why is there ever a time when enough is enough for them? I mean, they're going to...
Well, the worship of money is a sin, of course, but it's also a lie. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't fill a void. It doesn't get you to heaven. And to repeat the most tired of all cliches that you never hear anymore, you can't take it with you.
Yeah.
So it's just a lie. It's a disease, and it's a moral disease, and it's one that no one mentions anymore. So greed is not only fine, it's celebrated. Well, it's disgusting. I'm just going to remind everybody of that. It's not bad to have enough. It's bad to have too much, actually. And but no one believes that anymore at all.
Yeah.
And it's considered like you're a socialist or something if you say greed is bad. Well, no, you're not. I'm hardly. I hate socialism. I'm not a socialist. And thankfully, I've been like a public right winger for so long. I don't think anyone actually thinks I'm a socialist. I'm a right winger. I always have been. I guess whatever that means now. But greed is bad. It's not a virtue. It's a vice. And they're all besotted with greed, of course. And they think that the more you accumulate, I don't know what happens. You become. It's actually a function of power. The more power you have, the more you feel like God. But you're not God. You're just like some ungainly primate feeling his way through the dark. Like we all are. And you'll be negatively rewarded for those attitudes at some point very soon. So it's sad on one level, but it's also, if your whole leadership class is just about serving itself, it's all about greed and hubris, which it is, you're going to have really terrible leadership. And we do. And it's only about leadership, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the military, I didn't tell you, but bad leaders result in death. That's obvious, right? It's less obvious at the scale of 350 million people in our society, but it's still true. It's true in the family. A bad dad wrecks the family, wrecks his daughters.
Yeah.
All right, so that I have a whole bunch of thoughts about that, but this is not a Tucker Carlson episode, so I wanted to share that with you guys as a little tease. We'll talk more about Tucker because I think I never really knew much about his backstory, and now understanding his backstory and the way he is and everything, I see him in a different light than I used to. And I tweeted yesterday that Tucker's radicalization is far further along than I think any of us have really appreciated just yet. But okay, we'll do a Tucker stream here in the near future. For now, it's time to get mathy. Maybe we could have a segment called Mathy with Matthew. What do you think of that?
I'll check with the producers, see what they have to say.
Okay.
Hey, Matt.
What?
What do you think about a segment on the show called Matthew with Matthew?
I think it kind of sucks.
Okay, I'll let Matt know. Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
I just talked to the producer, and he said that the Matthew with Matthew segment sounds kind of gay, so that's a no.
Oh, okay. All right, well, he's kind of an asshole, so whatever.
I'll let him know.
You gonna let me know?
I was gonna let him know later, but I thought we were just gonna let it be dead air for a minute and a half.
All right. Well, let's get started with this one. So Cooper is a Cooper doesn't have much time generally for he likes schizo stuff, but once you start getting into the real like Gnostic hippie sort of yo, we're all God, bro. Like
Oh God, dude.
yeah, his tolerance for that he doesn't have very much.
I can tell you where it comes from as well.
Where?
It comes from my darling mother, who I love very much.
Mm.
She was a naturopath and was, you know, she was into like essential oils are fine, but like there's a degree or there's a certain threshold you cross with like essential oils where it starts to get into the territory that you're describing that like just rubs me the wrong way. She was into like, I don't know, like Reiki and all sorts of like, energy stuff. Like I'll just like hold my hands over various parts of your body and like energy waves will come through me and will like heal all your discomfort and like crystals and shit. And like I just I mean, maybe there's something to it. I mean, okay, well, Reiki, for example, is demonic. Stay away from it. That's. I am not saying that on my own authority. That's the church's position on Reiki. Stay away from that shit. But I don't know, man. It just gives me the ick. Like anytime anyone's into that, like we're gonna like have a drum circle and read an excerpt from the Bhagavad Gita, and I've got my I've got my, what do they call that? My diffuser with like, I don't know, oregano oil or something.
Oregano oil diffuser. I have a crunchy wife. Even I know that would be fucking terrible.
Yeah, crunchy is fine, but you cross like a certain level, a certain threshold where you go from crunchy to like you're flirting with demons, and like there's like, okay, you're either flirting with demons or you're just like, yeah, you're the totally like galaxy brain kind of surfer dude. We're all God, man. Like Starship Earth, bro. And I hate that stuff so much. Just makes my eyes roll back.
So then, but you said when you started listening to this this video with Robert Edward Grant, you didn't know how to categorize him.
Yeah, because he talks about like the woo woo shit, but he does it like he's so like, typically when you hear the nonsense, people start spewing the nonsense. It's coming out of a certain type of person who usually talks like this, bro. And we're all God, dude. I am God, and you're God, and like
Aubrey Marcus.
Yeah. You get that type. And I expect whenever I hear that kind of shit, I expect that type to be saying it. I don't expect like billionaire CEO, clear-eyed, focused, hydrated. Like, I don't expect that guy to be saying that shit. Who's also saying a bunch of really cool math shit that I don't understand. And like the juxtaposition between the two, I'm not sure what to do with.
Yes, it's very. And then, like for me, Randall Carlson is someone who I trust him as a good judge of character. So, and character is not reducible to like the things that you believe. Character, integrity, these sorts of things are they're I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say they're completely unrelated to those things, but they're so I this is where I first encountered him through Randall Carlson, and I was like, well, if Randall takes him seriously, then I guess I'll listen and see what he has to say. I'm very skeptical, but I'll listen to see what he has to say. And it turns out, I think so all the stuff that Randall was saying that people were spazzing out about in the last episode, he's even more explicit about all that. Like, we live in a simulation, we, yada, 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 whatever. But he's coming at it from the, like he's friends with Donald Hoffman, the guy who has talked about our minds being sort of like a heads-up display that's generating reality in real time. And we don't actually interface with reality directly. We interface with our perception of reality. And these guys are like genuine, like straight up like mathematicians. and they're just describing what they're seeing, and then they're describing what they're seeing, and they have enough disagreeableness or something like that that they'll look at things that other people don't want to look at, but they like it breaks their brain. They're like, I don't even know how to make sense of this, so they're just kind of like, well, let's try putting pieces together in this way and see what we get. And oh, it looks like we must live in, there's like some sort of simulation, like we live in a place where the universe was designed intelligently with patterns that all correspond to each other, and human beings seem to be at the center of that. So I guess, I don't know, if the divine pattern seems to be a reflection of humanity, then the only thing we could conclude is, oh, I guess we must have just built our future selves built a simulation for us to discover ourselves in. I can understand why they go through that train of thought. There was a time, I don't know, not too many years ago, that I was headed that direction. I was like, if I hadn't encountered orthodoxy, I would have been balls deep in that stuff as like, this is it, bro. Like my future self built a simulation for me to learn how to love.
I'm so smart.
Right.
What was the name of that that hippie chick on like TikTok or whatever, or Instagram, that everyone was talking about a few weeks back? Do you know what I'm talking about? Just the white chick with the ads and shit.
Yeah, I don't remember her name. She's like sings, like does like weird little
reggae or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if I hear, okay, I think I may be identifying the root of the issue for me. I think it's the person talking about it and how they're talking about it that really determines whether or not the cringe thing spikes for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if I hear her start talking about astrology, I'm ready. I just get up and walk out of the room. Like I have no time for that. If I hear Randall Carlson start talking about astrology, I'm like, this is fucking interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what that is, but
all right. Well, we've let in here for a while, so we'll dive in. We'll see how far we get through this one.
Yeah, the mystery of the pyramid, the geometry of music, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And first of all, in the geometry, that was just based on the slope angles of the pyramids, the 3 pyramids, and they matched the first 8 musical intervals out of 13 just with the first 3 pyramids.
Right. That I remember from our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, okay.
So real quick, one other thing about this is this isn't really a podcast. This isn't really like an interview, really. It's more like 2 guys who specialize in this field sitting here looking at stuff and trying to make sense of it. And it's mostly Robert presenting stuff to Randall and blowing Randall's mind, and him sitting there with his calculator, like punching stuff in and being like, So just to prep you guys for what to expect as we're watching this.
Is he including the octave as the 13th? Is that what, when he says 13 intervals, is that, I presume he means like the octave?
Yeah, he must. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
It's yeah. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You'd send it to me, and I was looking in both my emails. You know, where the hell? And
No worries.
Okay. All right.
And then the other thing I mentioned to you was that there was, we found all these petroglyphs on the walls in the King's Chamber, and that it was showing the precession of equinox, which had, all the deacon of astrology. There's 36 deacons.
Yep.
And kind of a very interesting story because it's very much in line with the pyramid being some sort of clock of time.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So, in fact, what I did is pretty cool. I made this crazy game that is out of basically image the Great Pyramid using LiDAR, and was able to stitch it all together. And so you could actually see the film of it. It's super fascinating. And it's a very, very cool thing, which I will also send you. I can actually probably share some of this stuff with you and just show it to you real quick so that you know. So these are actually images of the King's Chamber wall.
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Yeah, I sure do.
So this is, if you look right in the center, right, it looks like there's a bull right here. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I see it.
Right, and this is the north wall of the King's Chamber, and there's a cow, a larger cow that's outside of it. Here's the face of the cow. Here's the eye. Here's its shoulder right here, and this is Apis bull. And the original name of the Great Pyramid was Bull Mountain. So, and Rostau was the original name of Giza, which is Taurus backwards.
That's interesting.
So you've got the Apis bull in Hathor, which represents Osiris and Isis in her matronly form, right, as she got older. And then above it is, it looks like a bird. You can see right here what looks like the wing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side has another wing, but it's also matching. So this is Lyra constellation.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a pupil right here and another pupil right here. And the profile of a face of a man, and his nose and his nostril is right here. The other nostril is here. And his
Some of this is a little hard to see because we're like watching a screen share of a screen share of a picture, and you can't really see his cursor super well. But he's going to show some images in a little bit here where they've used like a computer program to overlay it and show what they're looking at. It makes it more visible.
lips are here, and his face comes across like this. And I'll find a better picture for you so we can see this. So the deacon of astrology is this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so Orion is in the Taurus constellation, Eridanus, Auriga. So all these constellations, you can see Pegasus, Piscis Austrinus, Delphinus, Aquila, and Sagitta. And those are in Capricorn. And so when you look at the wall of, this would be the east wall, it actually looks like this. There's a woman riding a Pegasus, shooting a Sagitta arrow at the Aquila. So that's Delphinus riding Pegasus, shooting Sagitta at the Aquila. So this was the Piscis Austrinus that I was just telling you about.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, so you could see on the wall that's the north wall, this is the same thing that I just showed you with the face of Orion. This is because it's in the exact location of the Orion constellation. You've got the bull underneath him, right over his throat, and Taurus represents throat chakra. And the bull looks like a diamond-shaped heart right here with straight lines. Can you see
It's
that?
another thing that when I hear
Here, and then there's cow.
when I hear people talk about chakras, that just takes me back to my dear mother.
It always just turns my brain off, basically. The only person who I've ever listened to who consistently talks about it is Robert Edward Grant. And because what's interesting to me is at first, as I was listening to him talk about it, I was like, it sounds like he's describing, like, if you had people who believed in the chakras and you wanted to talk about those people and talk about what they believed, then you would talk about the chakras and talking about what they believe. And so I'm thinking, okay, so there seems to be, whatever it is, these people seem to have this thing that they identify, these patterns and these things that are associated with whatever. So I'm curious to know what they think and what they believe about it and how these patterns connected to each other with these different phenomena in the past.
Right here. And then you got the face of Orion with the bird of Lyra on top of his face and across his eyebrows. So if you look on the right side, can you see this?
Yeah, there. That's zooming in. That's better.
Yep. So you see the nose bridge right here?
Mm-hmm.
It's etched into the wall.
Mm-hmm. And there's the brow ridge. That's the pupil. Is that the?
Yep, that's the pupil. This is the other pupil. Here's the nose. Here's the lips.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like there's DNA going over his mouth as well, which is, first of all, kind of mind-blowing that no one's seen this before, and that it matched exactly the positions of all the constellations where they should be on the walls, which is kind of a very shocking thing. And then if you include the DNA that's going across it, it looks like this. So it's got Draco, Orion constellation, Taurus, Canis Minor, Orion, and the drawings look candidly like stylized, almost Picasso style.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, sure.
Which is very bizarre because that's not Egyptian looking. It's not Greek looking. It's not any of that stuff looking. It's very strange. This is on the south wall, and we can see Ophiuchus, who has ram horns and black face right here, and a snake going around him. And then you can see some of the other stuff that's in here. We're analyzing all of this also with AI for the patterns. But the people that can see them tend to be people that do a lot of geometry work. So what are So, but why is the King's Chamber the shape that it is? Because if we look up in the sky, the 4 pole stars are matching that shape as well, the 2-to-1 proportion.
Mm-hmm.
So Polaris, Deneb, Vega, and Thuban.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's just kind of the way our night sky looks, and those are the 4 pole stars of precession.
Right.
So I think that the King's Chamber is like a clock.
Hey,
and it's giving a...
To any of our flat earther friends here in the chat, I'm sympathetic to your position. However, I've heard some of your best and brightest apologists debunk the notion of a wobble. And okay, fair. Maybe there is no wobble to the Earth. But what is precession? If there's no wobble, what is it that people are seeing?
Right. Because they're seeing something. All these ancient civilizations all have all of these legends and myths and everything associated with, to like extreme levels of detail that are associated with this phenomenon of precession. So people aren't just inventing this. It's there. Something's happening. I don't know what it is. So what's the flat Earth explanation for the great year and the precession of the equinoxes and the all the different equinoctial houses? Like how does that map? I have a feeling it probably would map onto a flat Earth much more readily than it would. Like it's probably much more straightforward and parsimonious with the flat Earth model. And maybe it's different numbers of years. Maybe there's different intervals or something like that we would learn from being able to put those things together, which might inform things about cosmic cycles and we'd know what we're looking at better if you put those things together. I feel like a retard talking about this because it's so completely beyond me. I'm just kind of like, whoa, dude, look, stars, man.
I am God, dude.
Yeah, bro. Josiah said, funny how serious men stopped looking at the stars and it became a silly woman thing. Just
Good point.
Yet another inversion.
So these would be the constellations on each wall. This is the north wall. Here's Orion. Here's Taurus, right? Eridanus. And we've got the ones that are facing the same direction of the head of Orion and Taurus, like Cygnus and Lyra right here. They show up on the upper wall. Here's a picture of the bull, close up of it. You can see this symbol right here as well. This is also a symbol of Orion.
Okay.
It's kind of shaped like the Orion constellation. But in addition, there's two birds. And the one with the two eyes is the white bird. So it's like over the eyes. They're overlaid on top of each other. And then Cygnus is the one next to it. Pyramid.
Let's do it.
So so you should be able to see this.
Yeah.
Now.
So yeah, I didn't know they had a nice sofa inside that in the King's
Yeah,
Chamber.
no, that's a new addition. It's a new addition.
Okay.
It's a special VIP section.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is my living room actually, and we stitched together all LiDAR images, and you're about to see this.
Okay. All right.
Right. So basically, it takes us into. This is from Apple Vision Pro, and it's going to take us into the King's Chamber. Which Apple Vision Pro is this new thing that just came out. Looks like this.
Oh, okay.
So fast forward a little bit, and it's going to take me right into the King's Chamber. Here we go. Now here I am. I'm in the King's Chamber.
Look at that.
How cool is that, right?
That is cool.
I got tired of spending the night in there. I spent 17 nights there.
If you don't think this is really freaking cool, I don't want to be your friend. Like this is really cool. Being able to go stitch together these images, go to a location, take all these pictures, get these images together, and then bring them back and be able to sit here and study them in actual dimensions and everything. That's really freaking cool.
Did you ever watch The Idiot Abroad?
No.
Okay, so Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant have a friend named Carl Pilkington, who is the most autistic. I don't know how to describe him. In any case, they have a TV series / documentary thing where it's basically a travel show where they send their fucking weird ass friend to all these crazy locations in the world. And he's like he goes to the he's standing before the pyramids or at Machu Picchu or whatever, and he's just totally unimpressed with everything. Yeah, it's really good. You got to watch it.
That would be funny. Just standing there, you're like, oh, it's so stupid.
Well, yeah, and he's not even looking at the pyramids. He's just looking at there's trash blowing around on the ground. He's like, look at this trash. This place sucks. And it's not even like he's doing a bit. He doesn't think right.
Is he retarded?
No, I mean, as far as IQ goes, no, he's probably average, but he's broken mentally. He's just looking at the pyramids and he's like, what was the point? This is stupid. Why are you stacking rocks? There's trash blowing everywhere. This sucks. He just wants to go home.
It sounds like you.
Yeah, I was just thinking because you were talking about like, man, if this isn't cool to you, I don't want to be your friend. And I was just like over here, like, eh.
It'd be funny if I just dropped you off the podcast right now.
It's all right. Go take a nap.
Yeah. 17 nights. Wow. Did you see?
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
You
So I'm
guys-
like walking around in my living room. You can see the furniture and stuff behind it, but you can also see that's the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
Put my hand on it. This is a really cool little thing. If you ever get one of these things, they'll get you the app. It's pretty epic.
Okay.
But you can see also, I'll kind of fast forward to some of these, where we light up some of these things, right? So on the wall here, you get like a pad, and you can see some of the things that we've already programmed into this. And so this is the Delphinus Sagitta shooting the arrow at the Aquila, and you can see it in the distance. I'll show you a better picture of it in just a moment. But you can see the arm, you can see the arrow going up, and what this does is it shows all of the, the stuff that's on the wall. So this is that same one that you just saw earlier.
Yeah.
Right? The bull, the cow, right? The face of Orion is exactly the position of it, and this DNA thing going across. So this is quite a mystery, right? There's a lion's face exactly where it should be behind the sarcophagus. That's Leo constellation. I actually believe that the Ark of the Covenant was originally inside the sarcophagus. The Ark of the Covenant has 4 faces on it. There are the cherubim. You probably might remember from Ezekiel, where it says the face of the man, the face of the lion, the face of the ox, and the face of the eagle, which is Scorpio.
Yep.
And the encampment of Israel, the 12 tribes, also carried those same flags. They were all the same as the astrological symbols. So it's like they were
This is a
recreating,
good
like
point.
they took it out of the pyramid, and then they recreated it in.
This is a good point to certain people who were spurging out on the last stream.
Mm-hmm.
And we had
Oh, yeah.
mentioned that there is like Babylonian and Egyptian astrology all over
Mm-hmm.
the Old Testament. That is that's another example that each of the 12 tribes was associated with
The
an
zodiac.
astrological symbol. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right. Which what that tells me is less it's not like, oh well, God uses astrology. No, it's like astrology is the study of something. It's people identifying patterns, observing these phenomena, and then trying to put it into a package and derive meaning out of it. That
Or-
the fact that they derive the
or-
wrong meaning doesn't mean the things they put together in a package aren't there or don't exist.
Or that something was revealed to them.
Right. Yes. Right.
the tabernacle alignment while they were, in the desert for 40 years. So this is basically what we've, found. There's also like an third eye that's at the top of the sarcophagus, and we just haven't put it in here yet. But on both sides of the sarcophagus are eyes as well, and 2 snakes that connect to those eyes that are etched into it. All of these are etched, and I believe they're actually put there. If you've seen the research, like we talked about, where you can sit next to a glass of water and then flash freeze the water, and then it carries the image of your thought in the water. And Veda Austin and several other people at conferences that you go to often have done a lot of research on this. And now it's been proven also be true for liquid crystal. Well, granite is at least 15% quartz crystal, and sometimes as high as 55 and 60% quartz crystal. So are these some sort of memory thing that's basically in here? The walls have all these
reminds me of-
overlapping constellations.
I was telling you about that guy I saw on Twitter who's recently been putting together a theory about geopolymers and how basically you take these or these geopolymer, basically it's like a plastic mix that when mixed correctly with the right ingredients, you can pour it into a mold and then it hardens like granite. And he was supposing that might be a good explanation for, some of these monolithic structures, and especially the ones like in, South America and stuff, where you get these massive blocks that are weird shaped that fit perfectly like a puzzle together, and you can't fit a piece of hair between them. He's like, yeah, if you poured it as a mold, then it would be perfect.
Right.
So him talking about, the granite blocks being whatever amount liquid crystal or whatever, like that made me think of that. Furthermore, supposing that the Great Pyramid, like if you look at these petroglyphs,
Glyphs, yeah.
Petroglyphs. Fuck, I'm tired, dude. And how they're really hard to make out. Like I can't imagine that they were always like that.
Right.
You have to imagine like at some point they were much more visible.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they were etched in there, so they were etched in there, And this particular part of the pyramid has not been exposed to the elements.
Mhm.
It's not like there's wind and water erosion and stuff.
Well, it depends on what the pyramid was being used for, because if the
That's
pyramid was
true.
being used as some sort of an energy generator, and the guy who wrote the Giza power plant book says that he believes that he's found that what he's seeing in there is evidence of some type of hydrogen explosion.
Okay. Well, I mean, all of that is to say is like, I think that just goes to show, like, okay, the idea that the Great Pyramid was built by like Khufu or whatever 6,000 years ago or something
Uh-huh.
is total bullshit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like given the
shit's way
magnitude, the scale and precision and sophistication with which it was built, and the fact we don't even know what it was built for, and it seems like the only things that it could have been built for are technological applications that we don't even have, that we don't even understand. Then the idea that maybe these drawings were made on the inside of the king's chamber by people using they maybe they have some understanding of how you can manipulate the state of matter based on its water concentration or whatever with like intentional thought. I don't think that should be something that's off the table. It seems like there's evidence that somehow water has some sort of a reflective, ironically, a reflective relationship to human consciousness. That whatever consciousness is that we seem to be receivers of, and it just so happens that water seems to play a really big role in the role of our DNA functioning as a receiver. Then the idea that these people who had some access to some sort of ancient technology that we don't understand, that some part of that could have had to do with being able to, maybe they're using like a combination of this like geopolymer stuff, and they're able to, and based on the concentration of water in it, or its whatever its particular atomic makeup was, they were able to influence it with focused thought or something like that. I don't think that this sort of thing, a couple decades ago, this might have seemed completely like incomprehensibly unrealistic, but it seems more and more like it should be something that we actually consider.
And the Alpha Omega is on the rim of the sarcophagus right there.
And just so you guys know, this isn't even getting into the good stuff yet. Like he's going to go through some of this stuff, and then he's going to get into the actual geometry of the pyramid and the building of the pyramid, and it is mind-boggling.
Well, okay, he's mentioning there that there's an alpha and an omega etched into the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. I bet a lot of you didn't know that. I didn't know that.
He's the one who discovered it.
Okay, there you go. An alpha and an omega. That's the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. This was allegedly built before the Greeks, like by how many thousand years?
And he doesn't get into it. He doesn't get into it in this video, I don't think. But the way that he found it, I've seen video of it, of the alpha and the omega there. And if you just look at it straight on and you just like shine a flashlight at it straight on, you won't see it. It's right there on the rim of the great sarcophagus. It's like on the, you have the whole side, and then you have the inside of the side, and then you've got this rim along the top, and it's like carved into it, but not in a way that you can see if you're looking at it. You have to if you imagine putting the flashlight like parallel to the rim and shining the light across the rim of the sarcophagus, then all of a sudden you can see it really clearly. It's sort of like inset into the stone, and
you have to like backlight it.
Yeah. And once you backlight it, you can see it really clearly. This is why nobody had seen it. But the reason he found it, and I'm just relating what he said. Who knows if he's making it all up or what, but he's the one who discovered it. So the way he discovered it is he had a dream. And in his dream, he experienced it like a memory of being there and seeing it there on the sarcophagus in that spot, as if he was there when the person was putting it there. And he had this dream and woke up and had this really strong impulse that he needed to go look for it. So he went to the pyramid, and he went inside, and he went to the sarcophagus, and he looked at the spot that he dreamed that it would be there and couldn't find it, and then backlit it and found it. So I don't know, man.
Which happens to be right at the 33rd inch against the 89.62 inches, which turns out to be a ratio of 1 over Euler. And the width is 5.605 inches, which is basically pi times 10 taken to its square root. And you probably know that the room's perimeter is pi times 10 meters. So we found that the meter, the foot, and the Royal Egyptian cubit have all been built into the pyramid's construction. All of the 3 measurement systems. So either the Freemasons that built it knew all of these measurement systems, or it's almost as if the pyramid was built, in a time where they knew both longitude, latitude, and it matched because the latitude is the same as the speed of light, and the longitude is 1 over pi. And that comes out to be 1 over pi, which is like 31.1342, and it's 31 degrees, 8 minutes, and 3 seconds in sexagesimal math. That's 1 over pi exactly. And if you take that same number of 31 and put it in the decimal conversion, 31.1342, divided by 360 degrees, it comes out to be 0.0864. And of course, that's the number of seconds in a day, 86,400.
Yeah.
The number you've presented on tons. So, so basically, this is where the Alpha Omega are. And I'll show you better photos of that in just a second. But basically, this is what we've ostensibly found. And it's matching all these constellations. And we're now putting them all into the wall so that everyone can see them nice and clearly. And basically, let's see here. Let me find this other one for you. Another interesting thing is that this was a map that I found from 1457 by a guy by the name of Fra Mauro, who is an explorer and a cartographer. And this sits in the Galileo Museum in Florence. And if you look at the name of the Nile River, it's Gihon, which is the name of the river that came out of the Garden of Eden. Okay, and there are 4 rivers, a place where 4 rivers meet. Well, Josephus and Herodotus both claimed that the Nile was originally the Gihon River. So these are the 2 major historians, and yet it's been changed, right? And of course, Babylon was supposed to have been on the banks of the Gihon River. And what's interesting is that, we never really found Babylon in Mesopotamia. There's not a lot of evidence. So there were 2 camps. There was sort of like the biblical scholar camp that said that Gihon River was in Egypt, and then the academic, which said no, it was in Mesopotamia. But Gihon is a reference to the word Cush, which means gushing water. And the Cushite people were from Ethiopia, Somalia area, and in between Sudan and Egypt. And they had control several times in history of the whole Egypt area. So there were never the Cush people in Mesopotamia. And I looked at all of the records and everything on this. So I think there's something going on. And I actually believe that what we might be looking at with Abu Rawash, where you have 2 pyramids that were exploded that match the Philosopher's Stone proportions, the one on the back of the dollar bill and the other one in an equilateral triangle. That may have been what we reference as the Tower of Babel, because also the original name of Giza and Cairo at the time of Jesus was Babylon.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why today in downtown Old Cairo, it's called Babylon. So I think our history is like off. And interestingly, it's right across from Abu Rawash. And
did I ever tell you about the TV show Dark on Netflix?
Yeah.
For you to watch the German show?
Mm-hmm.
More reason for you to watch it. They make a reference to the Philosopher's Stone, and there's all sorts of Tesla coils and all sorts of stuff. It's about 3-way time travel. It's fucking great. But if this stuff tickles your brain, that will tickle your brain.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you got me interested now.
And if Abu Rawash were built today, fully standing as a rose granite entire outer construction pyramid, it would be standing 600 feet high because of the elevation being 300 feet higher than the Great Pyramids. So imagine a pyramid that's 120 feet higher than the Great Pyramid, and you're looking from the Giza Plateau. That would be an incredible thing to behold because it would be at 60 degree angle. Super steep. And that is the measured angular, slope angle value, apothem, of the Abu Rawash Jed Pyramid, the Jed Pyramid, Jed Efre.
Do you have an image of that pyramid, the ruins of it?
Yes. In fact, I do. I think that you've been there before, haven't you? I think you went there.
Yes, I did.
It's the one that's got the big giant pit, and it's got a big hole in it, and I'll show you that in just a second. The way that all of this was found, right, and we also correctly predicted the next chamber. This was done by Jean-Pierre Houdin. It was published, but we had already predicted on my TV show that this was going to be the location of the next chamber because it matches the Vitruvian Man.
Mm-hmm.
So Da Vinci put these horizontal lines on the Vitruvian Man's body, and up atop it says he cut his man into 14 parts. That's a reference to the Osiris story of being cut into 14 parts.
Mm-hmm.
And when you overlay the pyramid and understand the squaring of the circle aspect of it, each of the locations of the chambers is exactly on the lines that Da Vinci left. The subterranean chamber, the ground level, the Queen's Chamber, King's Chamber, and also the next would be the throat. But then it also begs the question that there would be another one at the pineal gland and one at the crown.
Mm-hmm.
So I've shared this with Egyptian Egyptologists community. They're very intrigued. We found that Da Vinci lived in Egypt for almost 4 years. During the missing years that he was not in Italy, he wrote a letter to Sultan Qaitbay, who was a sultan of Cairo, actually referred to as the Sultan of Babylon, not Cairo. He was a Mamluk sultan who was Circassian. Circassians were from Ukraine today, which would be called Crimea.
Mm-hmm.
And Da Vinci's mother was a Circassian slave. So there's a
very interesting connection. Interesting that Ukraine keeps popping up in these sorts of things. And there's another video. I don't know if maybe we'll share it on an episode, or if one of you guys wants to see it, you can ask me and I'll find a link and send it to you. Where Robert Edward Grant here goes in and breaks down how the Vitruvian Man has the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, and it has all these different things in it, where basically the Vitruvian Man was created by Da Vinci as a sort of like a key to under like a map has a key. It was sort of like a key for understanding the Great Pyramid. There's very obvious connections to him, and then he's worked with another guy who's done extensive study of Shakespeare and found that there's all sorts of references to the geometric characteristics of the pyramid that are very distinct to the pyramid that are present in Shakespeare. That Shakespeare was basically written as kind of like a these the like Freemasons and scribes and priest class with their little secret societies and stuff. They want to embed information out in the open, and that's essentially what the writings of Shakespeare were for.
A lot of precedents here, and also there was very strong trade routes between the Medicis, the Medici family, and Sultan Qaitbay. So Sultan Qaitbay hired several European polymaths to build several of the mosques and castles and buildings in Cairo that still stand there today, because that's why they look very Tuscan style. A lot of that period looks very Tuscan style. So basically, the place at Abu Rawash, I'll show you this. So this is the Jed Efre pyramid.
So you had to come. Yeah, this is not a place you want to fall.
So we're 8 kilometers northwest of the Great Pyramid, in exactly an angle that matches the pyramid slope angle to the corner of the Great Pyramid.
This is already the same height as the Great Pyramid, look. Because we're so much higher, right?
So it says the peak of the Abu Rawash Jed Efre pyramid is approximately 8 kilometers from the peak of the Khufu, or the Great Pyramid. And it's interesting, he mentioned in another conversation I listened to that the Jed here, D-G-E-D, Jed Efre, there was a particular, I remember if it was like some kind of column or something like that had the all-seeing eye at the top of it. So it would be the Jed eye. And there was some sort of direct connection to Star Wars. Like, this is clearly what the inspiration was for the name of the Jedi in Star Wars.
So it's large block construction. And you can see that the rose granite blocks are exploded out hundreds of meters from that center point that I'm standing on.
Yeah, I can't quite make it out on the image. Can you enlarge your screen there, your share screen a little bit? Maybe
Say again?
Well, I was wondering if you could enlarge
Yep, sure.
your share screen view. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Okay, show me the blocks, the granite
Yep,
blocks.
so you'll see, so if you look at the blocks as I'm walking up here, right, they're all large block construction, but you can see burn marks and everything. Like, this pyramid exploded, like literally exploded. And I'm at the very top of what's left over. There's probably 20 concourses, and then the rest is all exploded out. And so this is the view of Giza from there. You see all those blocks down there?
Down on the flat land there?
Yeah, next to where the buses and the cars and everything. Those are all rose granite blocks.
That were a part of this pyramid.
That were a part of this pyramid.
Well, that's pretty wild.
They're exploded all the way out, like hundreds of meters. It's crazy. And then there's a pyramid that's the satellite that's right in front of it right here. And that's the same one on the dollar bill. It's a 67.4 degree angle, which is a 5, 12, 13 right triangle, half cross section. And
where is that on this image?
It's right. That's what I'm looking at right here. This thing right here. This pyramid right here has 86.4 feet as its base width.
Oh, yeah.
So there's another 864.
And the height was 103.7 feet. And it's 67.4 degree angle, right? And the number of blocks on the side that we can't see here is matching the dollar bill. The number of blocks on the first 4 or 5 concourses of the dollar bill as well. It's fascinating. So the Freemasons, I think, somehow knew something about this. And these were referred to forever as the Jed pyramids. And you probably heard about the Waz scepter and Jed and raising the Jed. The reason why they called it Jed was because it already was called Jed. And they said, oh, it must be the Jed Ephraim pyramid because they found a large crevice next to the larger of the two pyramids that they thought was a place for a solar boat, but they never found a solar boat. So they thought, well, there's a solar boat in Giza that was left by Jed Ephraim, so this must be Jed Ephraim. But actually, I don't believe that's the case, right? So basically, Abu Rawash is matching the pyramid, right? The smaller of the two pyramids is matching this proportion exactly. This is the Gaius Cestius pyramid in Rome that also has the Philosopher's Stone, the same as the dollar bill pyramid, the Eye of Providence. And this was built in 36 BC, and it still looks almost brand new today.
It sure does.
And there's so this is the other side of the pyramid. So now you can see the large block construction.
So here's the smaller pyramid right here. I think you guys can probably see my cursor on the screen. This would be the smaller pyramid, the one he's talking about, that the one he just showed is like a model of. And this would be the larger pyramid up here that has exploded somehow. And the connection to it here is, if you remember this, where was this image that he showed back here? So if I'm understanding this correctly, then the connection here is you have these lines in the pyramid that are on the Vitruvian Man, where Da Vinci divided his Vitruvian Man. He has lines literally written right across this, and it says something above it about him dividing it into 14 parts, which is a reference to the myth of Osiris, who was cut into 14 parts. And then Osiris, like mythologically, basically kind of is like a stand-in for humanity. So in that sense, he's sort of mythologically, he's kind of a I don't know if it'd be proper to say a Christ-like figure, but there's like a connection there. And so there's you have the pineal gland and the crown of the head, that these are like missing from this pyramid, sort of. So essentially what he's saying is that these other two pyramids that were 8 kilometers away are the ones that correspond to this, which would be the third eye one, and the crown chakra would be what it also corresponds to. So you have the Giza plateau with the 3 pyramids there, and then 300 feet higher in elevation, 8 kilometers away, you have these other 2 pyramids. And those 5 pyramids, in a sense, form like one complex they have a specific relationship to one another. We don't know exactly how they're connected or why they're connected, but it seems like there was some sort of this was some sort of a, whether it was like an like a generator, or capturing the resonance of the earth, or using water that's flowing through, like, because water flowed underneath it, and so maybe there's like an electrolysis dynamic to it, something along those lines. And he's speculating that this pyramid that's exploded like that, he's connecting that to Babel. So if you were to put this story together, it would be something like the Tower of Babel was a technological structure that was designed by ancient humans, antediluvian humans, who were trying to leverage their way to God status. And it would make sense too if the Gihon, so the Nile River that's coming down, that's flowing past them, if that's the Gihon River, which is one of the rivers that comes out of the Garden of Eden, then if you think about these people living there at that time, if they have this understanding of however it's been filtered down through their generations, where you have the mountain of God, where God is up in a garden on top of a mountain, and these rivers are flowing out, and you have this river that's the Nile River that they understand to be this water flowing out of the Garden of Eden. It's flowing out of paradise. So that means if we want to get ourselves back to paradise, then we're going to try to leverage this connection that we have to it. We're going to try to technologically leverage it in such a way to like hack our way back into the garden, so to speak. And so we're going to build these structures on top of this water that we perceive as having these magical powers or something like that. And we're going to try to use this to leverage our way up there. And then somehow, for whatever reason, whatever technical description you want to give it, you know the story of the Tower of Babel. Everything went kaput. And so is that because this is like the age-old story of humanity, that humanity is the Promethean myth. They get this technology and they try to use this technology, but we're not nearly mature enough spiritually or mature enough as a species to actually have this knowledge and know how to properly use it. And so you wind up getting yourself in over your head, and everything blows up out of your control. So is this because there was some sort of massive like cometary impact that overheated their circuits and caused a hydrogen explosion, as Chris Dunn theorizes? Was it, was, who knows exactly what it was, but this is sort of the picture he's trying to put together, and I think there's some really interesting merit to that.
So there's a lot of
let me get back
precedence
up to
here,
where we
and
were.
also there's of the larger Jed pyramid. So that pyramid was a 60-degree angle, the larger of the two, and it had equilateral triangles on it. So the two representations of Philosopher's Stone, which I believe represent the pineal and pituitary glands, the pineal being the sharper of the two pyramids, the 67.4, and the pituitary being 60. This was likely the crown chakra, because we believe that the Giza Plateau was the throat. That's why it's also matching the music. So here are the slopes.
I see. Yep.
So this is Michael Myers' Atalanta Fusions, which has the same 67.4-degree angle. And then this is the regular Philosopher's Stone, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
With your
Equilateral triangles.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is really what it would look like. One of them was 86.4 feet wide, 103.7 feet high, and that represented the pineal gland. And the larger of the two pyramids was 345.6. So it's the same base size exactly as Menkaure Pyramid, except that it has a 60-degree slope angle and represents the pituitary gland. But both these pyramids were literally exploded. We don't know how, right? So this is the picture of, if we look here, Osiris was cut into 14 parts. Da Vinci cut his man into the same location, cuts. The line at the groin, right? The line at the chest, the line at the shoulder, and at the elbow and the wrists.
I like that they have penis labeled here. FYI, there's a penis.
Matt, zoom in on that.
Let's see if I can. No, won't let me.
Guys, there's a penis.
You guys will have to figure out what a penis looks like from some other source. Sorry.
That Vitruvian man is so handsome.
I think it's supposed to be a self-portrait of Da Vinci.
There's no way he was that Chad.
Yeah,
He was a nerd. There's no way he looked like that.
you're right.
It's like you got this portrait of, he draws this portrait of Adam and leaves it in his notebook, and then he's just like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Right, and at the knees too.
Uh-huh.
So this is basically what we found, and then here's the dollar bill, which matches that exact same proportion.
Interesting.
Now this is the whole Nile, and I've done all this analysis on the Nile to look at all the temples, and found that they all had correspondences to musical notes as well, and astrological symbols. So that music, literally a harmony of spheres, and our precession of equinox also follows a musical relationship. And then you've got the opening of the lotus flower up here at the top into the Mediterranean, starting at Abu Simbel for the root. So you could look at it like this, that each of the temples are representing different astrological zodiac signs. And you have a male and female representation temple in several places, like Dendera and Abydos. They're the same, that would be the heart chakra, and represented by the Hathor. So the temple of Hathor. And the Apis bull, of course. Mm-hmm. Taurus represents the throat, which these would be like the vocal cords. Right? And then you get to Abu Rawash, which is up here. It's the last set of pyramids going north. And you've got pineal gland and pituitary. So this is what we talked about. We talked about the square root of 2 and suffering and difficulty. Mm-hmm. And you add it to the square root of 3, and it comes out to very near pi. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the degrees that represents of a 360-degree circle, it comes out to the golden number. 1618 is the square root of 2. So 161.8 degrees. So it's like the suffering and lead turns into golden ratio. Mm-hmm. Duality turns into gold in the context of the Trinity. So these were the pyramids, and each one of the proportions of Menkaure, Khafre, the Great Pyramid, are all matching these proportions that give us the diminished fifth, the perfect fourth and fifth, the major third and minor sixth. And that's what's defining the slope angles. That is the slope angle for Menkaure. That can only be made by a 5/4 right triangle from its cross-section. The Great Pyramid represents both unison and doubling the octave because of its 2/1. So you've got 5/4, 4/3, and 2/1. And these are the proportions of the pyramid. So we have 2/1 pi. So the ancients figured out that perfectly squares the circle, because the base of the 2 over 1 pi relationship, which is down here. So 2 pi over 1 pi and 1 pi over 1 pi, and then 2 over 1 pi are all built into the proportions of the Great Pyramid, giving it the 51.85397 degrees, which allows for a circle that would extend from the base of the pyramid to its apex to have the same circumference as a square built on 1/2 of the base of the Great Pyramid. So if you just make a square of 1/2 of its base, it will have a perimeter equal to the circumference of the circle that goes from the base and uses the height of the pyramid as the diameter of a circle. So it squares the circle perfectly as a perimeter and circumference value. And
If you didn't follow that completely, don't worry. He's going to give you a visual in a little bit.
I have to hear that again. To
Okay.
get in my. So let's go through that one more time, if you don't mind.
sure. Actually, I could probably show it to you this way,
Okay.
which might be even better, right? So I'll take you into GeoGebra. Hopefully you can see this.
Download it and
How hard to you. It's accurate because it allows you to be able to get 17 digits of accuracy on every calculation.
Okay. All right.
So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Right. So here we go. So this is the pyramid proportions. So if you look at, this would be the Great Pyramid, assuming it had a pyramidion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And its base right along here, right? And I can get the measurement here. Distance. Okay, its base is 432. Now this is a unit of measure that I've found showing up all over the world. 432, so 432 long cubits.
Long cubits, which translates to what?
Translates to 1.75 feet.
1.75. So that's a little bit longer than
It's a little bit longer than the Royal Egyptian cubit.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's like a translation between 440 hertz and 432 hertz. 440 hertz would give you 1.718. 432, if we made the direct translation based on this, would give you 432 long cubits for 440 Royal Egyptian cubits.
Okay.
So if we look now
That's
at the
mind-blowing.
circumference,
Right. Isn't that?
That's mind-blowing.
Because the whole like 440 hertz thing didn't happen until Rockefeller in the 19th century, 20th century. But somehow that relationship is there between these two different measurement systems. They have the exact same ratio as 432 and 440. That I can't even comprehend how that would be possible. For the non-music nerds out there, I guess, there's a big hullabaloo among the music community about whether the standard tuning A that we use. So like if you're in an orchestra, everyone tunes according to the same A. And it would be the A above middle C on a piano. Everyone tunes to that. And historically, that A has been expressed as 432 hertz. What 432 hertz means is that if you were to like pluck a string that's vibrating at that tone, it means it's going to oscillate back and forth 432 times a second. So that's what 432 hertz is. So so everyone used to tune to a 432, but then there's been lots of different iterations over history where they've used different numbers. They've used 439, they've used 437, they've used 442. 440 is what they've settled on today. So like all music that's produced and put out today is virtually all tuned to the 440 hertz A. And the people who really specialize in studying the relationship between frequencies and its effect on the human body and everything make a really compelling case that listening to music that's tuned to 440 is fundamentally like it's discordant to your body. It actually causes like metabolic and electromagnetic disharmony in your body. And then if you tune to the so if you're listening to music that's tuned to 440, then it's basically making you unhealthy. It's like exposing yourself to stress.
Bad vibes, bro.
Yeah, bad vibes, bro. And it just so happens that move to 440, that formalized move to 440 was a Rockefeller thing, which think what you will about that, I suppose.
the circle, right? Which is this one right here.
So real quick, so in case you don't completely follow what you're looking at here, these three triangles here represent the three triangles on the Giza Plateau. So this would be Menkare's pyramid, the smallest one right here. And then the two here are are Khafre and Khufu. So you have the Great Pyramid and the other pyramid that's slightly smaller.
It is a circumference of 8.64
In the long cubits.
in the long cubits. Yes. So 8.64 long cubits. We look at the, if we just make a square, right, of 1/2 from here. Let's see. Do this. There we go. And I go to the squares. Okay. So I'm going to make a square here to here. And then I'm going to do a measurement on that square's perimeter. Only the Great Pyramid does this. The perimeter, using half of its base length, turns out to be 8.64, and the circumference of the circle going to the top. It looks like the circle disappeared from me there. Here it is. There it is 8.64. So the Great Pyramid literally squares the circle perfectly from a perimeter and circumference perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's accomplished because of its 51.85397 degree angle. So you could convert this to 2 over 1 pi would be 1/2 of its base. So 2 over 1 pi. So if you had a height of 2 here, right up to the top of the pyramid, then this length right here would be 1 pi. And what's interesting about this is that it's also matching, you've probably seen this before, Shamash and the winged disc. So if I did half of that circle and took this length right here, right, this circle right here, and I look at its length, 4.32, which is equal to the length here of 4.32. And those are the proportions that we see on the winged disc.
So the 432 again, just for clarification, that's the long cubit.
That's the long cubit.
And what was the? Let me get that again. So the long cubit.
So one thing here, Randall gets really hung up on specifically which, what measurement, what do you call it? Unit is being used. And what Robert Edward Grant is pointing out here is that it actually doesn't really matter what this specific unit itself is. What he's pointing out is these ratio relationships. So the pyramid was constructed in such a way that the slope angle that it's using, and just remember that number for the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. We're going to end up coming back to that on a future iteration of this little series. But because it has that slope angle, it means that there's all these different ratios represented in the structure of the pyramid. So if you take this circle, you take a circle from the bottom midpoint and you go up half to the exact midpoint, the circumference of that circle is going to be 432, which is the same as, I believe, 1/2 of the base. Or maybe it was the full base. I can't remember, but it's one of them. All of this stuff here is like geometrically impossible to do without, like, if you were just given a square and or a straight edge and a compass, then you could only construct these things this way if you understood these relationships and these ratios between these numbers, like pi and Euler and the golden ratio, and the significance of these 432 and 864 and this particular slope angle and everything. So this is not just some ham-handed, like, I'll just build a pyramid there and just stack some stuff on it. There's an incredibly detailed, sophisticated blueprint where all of these different pyramids are built in particular relationships to each other, which reflect musical harmonic scales and also have a relationship to the astrological zodiacs and their relationship to each other and the size of the earth and shape of the earth and on and on and on.
And furthermore, each one of these pyramids independently is a stand-in for a different unit of measurement.
Yeah, he's going to get into that a little bit.
One is the foot, one is like the royal cubit, one is the long cubit or whatever. And taking any of these pyramids, you could recreate the other two pyramids.
Right.
Using the geometry.
Right.
Without doing any math, just using circles and squares.
Uh-huh. It's absolutely mind-blowing. Like, if this is the way that math had been taught to me growing up, I would be a
mathematician.
Right, yeah. I would be a master builder.
Works out when you translate to feet.
1.75 feet.
Just 1.75 feet. Okay.
Yep.
So 432.
And I think somehow this relates to your proportionality of 43,200 times.
Well, yeah. And this is interesting. Okay, so if I use 1.75 as the long cubit times 432, it gives me 756 feet.
Yep, and that is the base width of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah. Now, if I go that times the square root of 2 to get the diagonal of
Yep,
the period space, I get 1,069.145 feet. And if I convert that to inches, I get 12,829 inches. And bizarrely, the latest date for the lower Younger Dryas boundary is 12,820 years.
Wow.
So if you take double, measured in inches, then double that diagonal, gives us 25,659.
Which is about the long cycle of the precession. Pretty
Yeah.
close.
Pretty close.
25,920.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which also matches the number of breaths that we take in one day, on average.
On average. 25,920 breaths?
Yes. We have a breath for every 3 1/3 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So 86,400 divided by 3 1/3 equals 25,920 breaths.
Yeah, it sure does. Oh, man. Huh.
Which then, if you multiply that by 72 years,
Yeah.
So hey,
you end up
pause
with,
it.
It's the same as 25.
In case that passed you guys by real quick, so the astrological great year is, what is that, Matt?
25,920.
Do you know what else that corresponds to? The average amount of breaths that you take in a day.
Uh-huh. Right.
What?
Yeah. So, like, okay, I'm open to believing that the wobble is fake. I want someone to prove to me why the wobble is fake. But or not. I've had someone prove to me why the wobble is fake. But I want to understand. Okay, where does this 25,920 thing come from? Because I know that it wasn't like someone sitting there counting the number of breaths that he took in a day and averaging it out over a whole bunch of time and doing it with a bunch of other people and then saying, "Oh, let me come up with this astronomical precession of the equinoxes thing and have it come out to being just exactly the same." These things aren't being made up. Like, these things independently exist, and they directly.
They cannot be coincidence.
Right. And it's what, we take a breath every 3 1/3 seconds. So that means that we take a breath on average every 3.3333333333333, like, repeating. There's that 3 is just jumping right out at you there. And I think he's gonna go, if I remember right, what he says next is even more mind-blowing.
Yeah, it sure does. Oh, man. Huh.
Which then, if you multiply that by 72 years,
Yeah.
you end up with, it's the same as 25,920 squared, which is the speed of light in miles per hour, 671 million.
Pause that.
So 25,920
Pause
squared.
that. So the amount of breaths that you take in a day, multiply that by the average lifespan, and you get the speed of light. Explain that.
Uh-huh.
What?
One interesting. I think I mentioned this on the phone yesterday. One interesting point he makes is he's definitely Robert Edward Grant is definitely an ether believer, and let's see, how do you? So the idea with the ether, or one of the things you would understand with an ether, is that light would not be traveling. There's this whole like wave particle duality thing, and this presumes there's no ether. When in reality, if you think about this, that an example he gives is there's 2 different examples. One of them would be like if you're at a sporting event and everyone's doing the wave, and the wave goes around the stadium, and what do you do when the wave gets to you? Well, you go from your off excitatory state to your on excitatory state. You stand up and you raise your hands up and you sit back down again. So the wave travels all the way around the stadium, but you don't move anywhere. You stay put. Another way of thinking about this would be if there was a big...
In that analogy, the people are the ether.
Right.
That the wave is traveling through.
Or, yeah, the people are like the whatever the ether is made out of.
Yeah.
And so then if you imagine a massive earthquake off the coast of Japan and a tsunami covers California, then I know I just got all you guys real excited. Tsunami covers California. The water molecules that cover California are not the water molecules that were disturbed in Japan by the earthquake. So the wave travels across the water molecules, across the water. It moves across this background surface, but the wave itself is not exactly the same as the things themselves. So then in this, if you understand this with light traveling across the ether is not The light particles themselves aren't moving across space and time. The ether itself has some kind of disruption that's happened to it. And the way we experience that disruption is seeing the light moving. So then the point he made was you could think of the speed of light as, rather than it being the speed of light, so to speak, it's actually the speed of our perception of the light, which has some follow-on consequences that are really interesting.
Javier Oliva says, all of this may explain why I am revulsed by the metric system. Many of these measurements are based on the human body. Metric system, the tool of the devil. I mean, it is.
Hell yeah.
It is, yeah, I mean, if we switched over to metric today, how long before all of this knowledge is lost?
Right.
Because
Right.
all of this shit is encoded in our measurement systems that go back thousands and thousands of years, and nobody even knows where it started.
Uh-huh.
Like the mile, the foot, the inch, the furlong, the pace. These are things that are still used today.
Yep. And they're all reflections of the human body.
And they all just encode these numbers
Mm-hmm.
and these proportions and relationships.
Yeah, it's almost like reality was not just something that was created in humans or some random part of it. It's almost like reality is something that was created specifically for humans, and it reflects humans.
So what did you say again?
671 million
Yeah. That's in miles per hour?
miles per hour.
Miles per hour. Okay. Miles per hour. Then so then that times 3,600 would give you your miles per second.
Yep.
Presumably, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Miles.
So I think there's definitely something connected to your 43,200 reference. And I think the actual value of the unit of measure for the Great Pyramid is 432 long cubits. And I find that same measurement all over the world in different pyramids.
Now, the long cubit, this is the first I've heard of the long cubit, other than you mentioning that to me in our conversation last
Mhm.
week. Is there any independent?
Not that I've seen. I read the book, The Megalithic Yard.
Yeah, Alexander Thom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they don't make reference to it. I did not see it in any of that book. I mean, their reference to the megalithic yard, I believe, was the Euler number. It was 2.72.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
So
was.
I think there's something. Look, first of all, 432 is a critical number. Why is it so critical? Because Euler to the power of pi, right? 1 over Euler to the power of pi equals 10 to the fourth power over 4.32. I'll show you this. So Euler to the power of pi. Then we take 1 over that, 4321.
And
Detractus.
Malcolm Bendel's plasma technology, his thunderstorm generator,
Yep.
which is based on a series of concentric cylinders and spheres, found that the optimum effect was accomplished when the ratio of the spheres was 4:3 to 2.
Yeah.
And further, you'll get this. When it sets up this vortex of whirling plasma,
Mhm.
so the plasma is injected into the sphere, and it creates a vortex, which is then travels down the cylinder. Now, there are concentric cylinders, like 4, 3, and 2. And so the vortexes will be whirling clockwise between the outer and the inner. Then the next one, it'll be counterclockwise. Then the next one, it'll be clockwise, which creates an implosive effect. Now, when this vortex of whirling plasma transitions from the sphere to the cylinder, in order to prevent turbulence from being introduced, there has to be an angle. In other words, the cylinder doesn't just come into the sphere
Yep.
circular. There's an angular transition piece. 51 in his experimenting is that the optimum angle
Great
for that
pyramid.
transition was the pyramid angle.
It makes sense. It actually does make sense because
Okay, so this is one of the future streams we're going to do on this is talking about this technology here that Randall is talking about, this thunderstorm generator. It is mind blowing, and what he's saying here is that in the construction of this generator, which effectively, when it's applied to any sort of internal combustion engine of any type, it immediately, as soon as it's switched on, the emissions that are released, anything that burns quote unquote fossil fuels, the emissions that are released as soon as this technology is adapted onto it and then switched on, the emissions go immediately from being like normal diesel exhaust or whatever to like alpine meadow air. And it has to do with generating plasmoids and running them through these series of concentric circles. And as he kind of explained there, we'll go into more detail on it on a future episode. But it makes the operation of the engine, I think it like triples its efficiency so far in the initial testing and stuff that they've done. And it basically turns every single internal combustion engine into a tree. in terms of its emissions.
And not only does it clean the emissions and improve the efficiency, but it also runs the engine.
Yes. Right.
So it's almost self-perpetuating.
Yes.
The only thing that needs to be done is you need fossil fuels just to kickstart it, and then you have to change the water every couple hundred hours or something. But that's it.
Right.
Aside from that, it's self-perpetuating.
Right. And the guy who invented it based on, he's basically completely reimagining everything like the periodic table and everything, but he's using this sort of the sacred geometry understanding of like the construction of the pyramid and the Ark of the Covenant and all these different numbers. He's using them and these ratios in the construction of it. So as Randall just explained, number one, you have to have this 4-3-2 relationship between the components of it that they're using. And then when you have this tube that connects to this sphere, the plasmoids are generated into this sphere, and they're swirled into a vortex and then funneled into these tubes. And unless the sphere and the tube are connected at the precise right angle, the precisely correct angle, then it will generate turbulence and the whole thing won't work. And that angle is 51.84 degrees, which is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid. And it just so happens that it seems like the Great Pyramid was some sort of an energy generator device of some type. So like these things, you can't just write this stuff off as coincidence. I mean, at some point, there's too many coincidences to just write them off as coincidences. They're clearly onto something. And just real quick, because this is something I had no idea about. He's mentioned it a few times already, and he's going to mention it a few times more. This number called Euler, and it's a mathematical constant. This is the number 2.71828, blah 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 blah. So it's an irrational number, meaning it never repeats and it never stops. It just goes on forever. So it's like pi, or like the golden ratio. And it's a number that's used. It's the base of the natural logarithm function.
Dude,
what?
As an aside, real quick, have you looked into this Robert Grant fellow? Apparently has like discovered new numbers and new constants.
Yes. He discovered a new type of root called fractal roots.
Well, and furthermore, he also discovered that there are, like, if you're counting between 1 and 9, there's two numbers in there that we don't count because they're irrational that should be in there.
Uh-huh.
That when you use all the geometry and put it together and stuff like that, you get these numbers that appear as constants. That everyone's like, oh, that's static. And they ignore it. He's like, no, these should be actual numbers.
Right. Because they're like building blocks.
Yeah, there's like 3 numbers. You're counting to 1 to 9. There's 3 numbers that we don't count that should be in there, but they're not because they're irrational numbers.
Uh-huh.
But they're constants and they're geometric, like the forms appear naturally.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
I think
those beyond me.
Those 3 numbers would probably be Euler, pi, and phi, or phi being the golden ratio.
Nope. He's completely termed them. They're just new numbers.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's something like, I don't know, it's like 3.33333 and then 6.33333 and there's a couple of them.
Mm-hmm. So Euler is it says it appears often in growth problems such as population models, also appears in physics quite often. It's used for, I know that it's used for interest, for calculating interest rates. And it has all kinds of applications, population growth. And basically, I think he mentions it more. He goes into it more here later on. But so pi is like the number of a circle, and Euler is the number of a square. It's like the number that corresponds to the square. Pi corresponds to the circle. And then the golden ratio would probably correspond to the triangle. I'm not sure.
Actually, if you look at Euler to the power of pi, which obviously is related directly to the Euler's identity, it's the most beautiful equation in mathematics. E to the I pi plus 1 equals 0.
Yeah.
But what we found is that that there's a true real value for the imaginary number, and it's the square root of 10 divided by 10, and it takes on a negative characteristic. So what happens is when you do e to the I pi plus 1, and you use the square root of 10 divided by 10 for that value, it turns out that the answer is no longer e to the I pi plus 1 equals 0. It's e to the I pi plus 1 equals light, which is the fine structure constant. It comes out to 1.37036. That's the number that Carl Sagan put on Voyager spacecraft.
How about that? So let me get this. The square root of 10.
Yes.
Which
So
is
I'll just show you on the calculator here.
Yeah.
So the square root of 10, right, I found that prime distribution relates in the beginning to the square root of 10. It doesn't end up at the Euler number for the natural log for the distribution of primes until you get out to like 10 to the 12th power, right? The number of prime numbers is very correctly oriented when you use a base logarithmic value of the square root of 10.
Mhm.
So it's fundamental to our number system. So we've got the square root of 10, right? And then if I took this number, right, which is 3.162277660168379, okay? I'm going to divide this or take its reciprocal value. It's the only number that does this. Its reciprocal is equal numerically to its original number.
Yeah, I see that. That's wild.
Right. And so when you've got a differential between 10 times of something or orders of magnitude, the two numbers, when multiplied by each other, take on differential polarities. So you have one that's a positive charge, the other becomes a negative charge. So then its reciprocal becomes this, negative.
Mhm.
So now if I take this number and I multiply it by the square root of 10, just like this, I now have an imaginary number, -1. And this is a new type of square roots that we found and we published, and it's called fractal roots. That every number has a fractal root pair that can be cubed or the 4th power or the 5th power, and they sit 10 times, one order of magnitude apart, and one number takes on the positive and the other takes on the negative characteristic. So this gives us now e to the I pi plus 1 equals 1.37, which is light. And by the way, if I take 1.37 and I multiply it by pi, I get 4.32. The
Say that
circumference.
again. Say that again.
So 1.37, or the
Right.
golden angle,
Yep.
right? So 432 divided by pi to give us the diameter is 137.
Uh-huh.
So in Royal Egyptian cubit, right, the height of the pyramid is 280 Royal Egyptian cubits. But in the long cubit, the midpoint of the Great Pyramid is 137.5098 long cubits.
So did he discover the
Okay.
long cubit?
So what
as
we've
the
got
unit of
here-
measurement?
I think he might have. I'm not sure. Whatever this unit of measurement is, it's absolutely there. I don't know if he's the one who discovered it or if it was something little known. I'm not sure.
Huh.
Is a circle that the key, right? There's a key here. The key is the understanding how to construct a circle with a circumference that's equal to the base line of the pyramid. That's the key. And once you understand that, and that's the basis of Metatron's cube. So you can construct the entire Giza plateau without any measurements, just like the old Greek and Egyptian method, no measurements, using only Metatron's cube, which is kind of mind-boggling. So I think all of this is related to this work you're talking about with Bendel as well.
Okay, so real quick, let me just show you guys Metatron's cube. I put it on the thumbnail of yesterday's episode. You guys have seen it before. You'll recognize it as soon as you see it. It is this. So this shape here, this is Metatron's cube. And what's very interesting is so Metatron's cube becomes apparently the way you draw Metatron's cube is you can create all of these relationships here with no measurements. Again, you're just using a straight edge and a compass, and you can create that, and then you can derive every shape known to man can be derived from Metatron's cube. And what he's saying here is, so Metatron's cube seems to have an intimate relationship with Da Vinci's stuff, because he gets into the Last Supper painting, and there's a bunch of other stuff that Da Vinci has that's all related to the Great Pyramid. And then Metatron's cube seems to be the key essentially for unlocking all the ratios and measurements and everything for constructing the whole entire Giza plateau. And Metatron is here. I'll just do this real quick. So Metatron, here's where we trigger some more people. Metatron is an angel in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Metatron is mentioned 3 times in the Talmud, in a few brief passages in the Aggadah, the Targum, and in the mystical Kabbalistic texts within rabbinic literature. The figure forms one of the traces for the presence of dualist proclivities in the otherwise monotheistic visions of both the Tanakh and early and later Christian doctrine. In rabbinic literature, he's sometimes portrayed as serving as the celestial scribe. The name Metatron is not mentioned in the Torah or the Bible, and how the name originated is a matter of debate. And in the Islamic tradition, he's known as Metatron, the angel of the veil. In Jewish Apocrypha, early Kabbalah, and rabbinic literature, Metatron is the name that Enoch received after his transformation into an angel. So isn't that interesting? That this thing that is associated mythologically with Enoch is the key to unlocking geometry. Yeah.
So, for example, if I take e to the power of 1 over pi, gives me again the golden angle. 1.375 effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So these are fundamental. 432 and 4321, right, are fundamental to this tetractys structure. And not only that, it's fundamental to Euler and Pi's relationship, because Euler and Pi together make light and time from a physics perspective. So another thing that's worth pointing out is that Khafre pyramid is here, the smaller pyramid of the two.
Yeah.
And if we take its circle, right, so we take its 1/2 base square for Khafre is this, this is the Great Pyramid square, right? But it's the same as the blue square here. But if we took 1/2 the base of Khafre, we find something very unique, because it shows us that the two match up with each other. I'll show you here. Okay, so now I'm going to make a square from 1/2 the base of Khafre, right? Which I'm going to go here like this. And then from its midpoint, which I can find just doing this, make an X across here. So this is the 1/2 base Khafre square.
Mm-hmm.
Perpendicular line. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to make a square that's at the center, just like this.
Okay, so real quick, he's using the Khafre pyramid. He's making a square where each side is 1/2 the length of the base of the pyramid. And then so he creates that square, then he draws an X across it, so you find the exact midpoint of the square, and he's putting a horizontal line to mark that.
Vertical.
Or vertical line to mark that.
At the center, just like this. Okay, now I put the other one on this side.
So now he's with that square that he's formed, which was each side is 1/2 the base. Now he's cut that square perfectly in half by inputting a circle that is at the midpoint of the original pyramid.
So now we've got this square that we could construct from here.
Now that's
here.
Square on the half side of Khafre's.
Correct.
And you just centered it on the vertical axis.
I just set it on the vertical axis.
Got it. Okay.
So now I'm going to change the color so that we, don't get confused, and we'll make it this color right here. Okay. So it's this square right here. Okay. Now, if we take that and then also look at the Great Pyramid square, which is this one right here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This one, this larger square.
Outer one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Look what happens. The Great Pyramid's larger, the square, which is based on 1/2 of its base, the same as the blue square right here, just centered at the vertical axis.
Got it.
Is touching exactly, perfectly,
Now that's wild.
the Khafre circle, which extends from its base to its apex.
All right. So, okay.
So in other words, the circle and the squares and the bases from like one pyramid match up to the circle of the other pyramid.
Yes.
Okay, so if you were to take a circle and like that extends from the base to the point of the pyramid.
Uh-huh.
And then you take the square from the other pyramid, it like matches Matt, explain it.
So if you have the two pyramids and you take the square from the base of one of them and the circle that's formed if you go from the base to the top of the other one, and you overlay them onto each other, the corners of the squares fit perfectly within that circle. So this is like there's no way you could get this accidentally. This is explicitly made to form these pyramids are made with this ratio one to the other intentionally. So the square of one of them is the same as the square or as the circle of the other one.
So in other words, before any pyramid was built, this was known. They figured this out. It wasn't
Yes.
like one guy built the pyramid and then his grandson, his grandson or whatever built the following pyramids. That's bullshit.
Total bullshit. There's no possible way.
Okay.
So
So
what's going on here, Robert?
this is a combined plan. These are all built at the same time. How could you convince somebody this is what you're going to build when you die? It'd be really difficult. You know, oh, we've got some missing notes you got to fill out here. These are all built at the same time, I believe. And the other thing that's interesting is we look at Menkari pyramid. Menkari is the only one that has perfectly this proportion locked into its structure. So the 5/4 height over 1/2 base of the major third gives us a 51.34 degree angle. And its 1/2 base square exactly does the same thing as the Khufu square matching the Khafre circle. It does it inherent to its height. So here's its circle from its base to its height. And the height of the Menkari pyramid is 216 feet. The height of Khafre pyramid is 144 meters. And the base is 216 meters. So the unit of measure for Khafre is meter. The unit of measure for Menkari pyramid is the foot. And the unit of measure for the Great Pyramid is actually the long cubit. And they're all pointing back to 432, just in different reference points. So 144 goes into 432. 3 times. So you got 432 for the Great Pyramid, 144 meters goes into 432 3 times. And then the Menkari pyramid is 216 feet, which goes into 432 2 times.
Yeah.
What do we got going on here, Randall?
I don't know. I'm waiting here for you to enlighten me.
I mean, is this kind of interesting to you?
Absolutely. And 216 feet, of course, is the cube of 6.
Yes.
And a lot of other interesting things.
So 216 feet is 6 times 6 times 6.
Exactly. Which is the compass as well. It's the moon's diameter is 2,160 miles.
Yeah.
The compass has 21,600 minutes.
Yeah. And the length of 1/12 of the
precession of equinox of 25,920, 2160, 1 aeon.
Yeah.
So what I found is that I could construct all of this without any measurement whatsoever. And it was all just in Metatron's cube.
Starting with Metatron's cube.
Yep. So I'll show you this real quick. So we did this film called Holy Grail of Geometry. Okay, and here it is.
Make memory.
Let's examine the basic grid connecting these circles or spheres with the unit diameter 1. Since this angle is 30 degrees, the length is always a ratio of √3, no matter what fractal of the grid we're observing. We find the exact same proportion.
Fractals in the chat, folks. We've got fractals. Fractals in the chat.
In the very first construction of Euclid's elements, the vesica piscis, the sacred symbol used in medieval art to depict a halo.
You can skip a bit here.
There was
I
a
can't hear the
simple
audio
key to
too
the
well.
seeming complexity of the Giza pyramids. It must be found somewhere within the inherent geometry created by connecting every center of the 13 equal circles to every other center, which when accomplished looks like this. It's been known since Plato's time that by selectively connecting certain combinations of these lines, the 5 Platonic solids, the basic building blocks of creation, can all be perfectly formed within Metatron's cube. It's also clear to see that every Metatron's cube connects to every other Metatron's cube directly through its 3 central axes in an infinitely repeating grid pattern. So, can this interconnectivity be used to decipher a previously unforeseen grid connecting the 3 pyramids? Green's discoveries of hidden geometries on the cover of Shakespeare's Sonnets revealed not only the geographic coordinates of the Great Pyramid, but the math constant that predicts its corner slope angle. It's positioned in such a way
with that green
as to align
panel you
with
just shown on the
circles.
pyramid, that's showing the
It solves the
indentation.
conundrum that Johannes
What'd you say? Sorry there.
Oh, well, on the graphic of Khufu's pyramid, I believe is what that is. It's kind of small on my screen, but you showed the green filled-in triangle, and that is the marking the indentation. Is that correct?
Yes, it was the apothem angle. So if I expand this, it's not showing up expanded for you, huh?
No, it's not.
Okay, let me try. Is that larger now?
Yeah, that's larger.
Okay, so here's how it works. So you take Metatron's cube and you connect. Can you see where my cursor is?
Yes, I can.
You connect where this intersection is here
Yep.
from this line and
Yep.
this line, and then you connect it to this intersection here,
Yeah.
right, which connects here, right, at this line, and then through this line. And then where it crosses over this rectangle, which is √3/1 proportion,
Yep.
you mark it. So you don't need measurement.
We don't.
You simply mark it and then draw a circle from it. And that gives you the base width of the Great Pyramid.
Wow. Okay.
And then the height of the pyramid is just to the center from that base of Metatron's cube. Right here. And that gives you the 51.8539 degrees.
Yeah. There it is.
There she is. And then from this, you could easily construct as well the Caffrey pyramid, which comes in as follows. So you make a square of the Da Vinci square. I mean, not the Da Vinci square, but just the base, half base of the Great Pyramid square, which is this one right here, the blue. You put a diagonal across it. You mark the center point. You don't need measurement for any of this. And then where it crosses the center point line, you draw another diagonal, find that center point of the circle, then draw another circle that just goes just slightly shy of the center point. And then that gives you exactly the height of Caffrey and the 3-4-5 relationship. You just take the top of that circle and you draw this 3-4-5 triangle. And then where that crosses over that half point diagonal to the center, the red dots define the slope of Caffrey pyramid exactly. And the 53.13 degrees. So now we've got two of the pyramids on Giza in the exact right proportion to each other, just from Metatron's cube with no measurements. And then we do the we do the following to find Menkaure. But notice the circle of Caffrey is matching the exact points of the square of Khufu, showing the intentionality. It's something about the square masculine meeting the divine feminine. And then we follow the next process, which gives us exactly Menkaure pyramid, which now we draw these two circles right from the center point, and then see where they overlap that midpoint diagonals. And then from there, we draw an X to the corners, mark the center point of the intersection. Then we draw a circle. And where it intersects those midpoint diagonals, we draw a square. We drop the square right there. And that's the 1/2 base square of Menkaure pyramid. So then we have proportion of Menkaure as well, all from Metatron's cube, with no measurements.
So it looks like these guys were master geometricians, doesn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So then you just double that base of that square, and that gives you the base width of Menkaure pyramid, defined by the green circles, and then pull up your slope. To me, this is a Giza plan.
It sure has the appearance of that, and I'm going to have to take a day next when I get back from Nashville and just go through this geometry step by step.
Yep.
My compass and straight edge in hand.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, we've actually done 3 in the series of this Holy Grail of geometry, and we relate it all to music. It all comes back to music. Actually, it's all musical interval, and it's quite beautiful. And it's all tetractys and tetragrammaton. So this is like the ancient wisdom stuff. So I wanted to share those things with you because I think we got something that we're starting to like have emerge.
But it's so sophisticated though that it's you can almost understand how the mainstream academia is having trouble with this because they're so locked into their paradigms of prehistory. There's no place for anything like this in the thinking or the mindset of ancestors 5 to 10,000 or 20,000 years ago.
Absolutely. But, so this is, I think what we're dealing with here is some really advanced understanding of mathematics and music combined. I think there was a plan. The architectural plan is Metatron's cube, which makes sense because it's the one form that can give us all of the different Platonic solids.
Yep.
And even the Archimedean and the Catalan. And to me, that's very fundamental because it shows something about the hand of an architect that was clearly planned. And it's not only there. We found that the other pyramids around the world, in Teotihuacan, in Chichen Itza, they're all matching the same numerical grid pattern of integers that create their slope angles. And I think I was probably one of the first, I don't know who else has done this, that really analyzed why the ancients built the slope angles that they built for all the pyramids, because they're all different. And I found they're all Pythagorean musical notes in just tuning.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting numbers here coming up. In particular, I'm very interested in processional numbers and the idea that the processional wheel is punctuated by events. You could just say nodal points where things happen. And I'm going to guess that if we could somehow reconstruct the geometry of time, we would find the intersection, just like you were finding in the diagram, the keys it's like each step sort of generates the next step. You have to have a starting point, but then you can create the whole geometry once you know that starting point.
Yep.
For I would guess now Metatron's cube, it's been a few years since I've drawn Metatron's cube, but it begins just with the 2 overlapped circles in the vesica with the square root of 3/1.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
which the square root of 3 we just talked about is the essence of divinity and the Trinity.
And so from there, we can then create the entire Metatron's cube, and then inherent within that geometry is the architecture of
The Giza Plateau.
The Giza Plateau, yeah. There it is.
Which is super beautiful when you think about it. It's like, wow, that's epic. And
Well,
I think what we're finding, even I could take it a step further to show the intentionality, because if you look at the area of the Great Pyramid cross-section of the triangular structure itself, it comes out to the same value as the perimeter and the circumference. It's like matching up again. And that's kind of another mind boggler, right? It's like, really? You got to be kidding me. I'll just show you this real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so you can see this again, right?
Yep, I sure can.
All right, so now if we look at the area, I'll just get rid of some of these extra squares. So I can find the area of this, the Great Pyramid, which is 5.904, right? Look at the area.
You said the area of the Great Pyramid.
The area of the Great Pyramid is exactly matching the area of the circle right here. Look at that. 5.9404264199, and the area of the Great Pyramid is 5.904269404264199. It's the same value. So it's like triangling the circle.
So when you're talking the area, you're talking about the area of one of the faces?
Yeah. So the area of the face of the pyramid as a cross section, right? It wouldn't be
As
the
a
actual
cross-section,
slope.
yeah,
It would be the
it'd be-
cross section,
Right.
right? It matches the area of the circle that goes from the base and uses the height as the diameter of the circle. Again, showing like extreme intentionality. So just to repeat, let's get rid of some of this here, get some of the clutter out. So we've got the square that was the half base square of Khufu, the Great Pyramid. And it was matching up with its position to exactly the circle of Khafre. Again, showing the intention. And the circle of the Great Pyramid, which has a circumference, right, of 8.64, this one right here, 8.64, is the same as the perimeter as this square of the Great Pyramid, which is 8.64. So this is matching this. And then the Great Pyramid's cross-section area is 5.9404, and that's exactly matching the circle from the base to the apex of the pyramid as its area. It's pretty genius.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm going to have to work through that, and I'm going to do that. It's going to be fun.
I think you're going to have a really good time with it.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And that all of it could be found just in the inherent lines of Metatron's cube.
Right.
Wow.
You can see right here, Robert, is my compass straight edge and my large drawing pad on my octagon table. And there's my model of the Great Pyramid sitting in the center of the table.
I see it.
Inspire me.
I see it.
You can see it right there now.
I'll send you a gift this year for your birthday. When's your birthday?
Well, actually, it's the 26th of this month.
Wow. Okay, so very close. I've made a geometry set of high precision instruments because I was never happy with any of the ones that are out in the market. So I made one and designed it from scratch, very, very high precision, a whole set. And the ruler has no memeasurements to adhere to the ancient ways. But it's a very nice set. I'll send it to you just for fun.
Yeah, and I was just gifted this, which I haven't used yet.
Wow, the cubit.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Really nice. That let you.
Real quick, one other interesting thing about Robert Edward Grant is so because of this, related to the, he's been using these geometric relationships and Metatron's cube and these different relationships and everything to figure out different patterns related to prime numbers, which, and this is where it's completely beyond me, but essentially prime numbers are really important for cryptography. And he's actually developing his own forms of cryptography because some of these discoveries that he's made about relationships between prime numbers and like the predictability of prime numbers would actually break most like normal forms of cryptography that are used today. So he's actually been inventing his own forms of cryptography. The guy's a legitimate polymath. There's not a whole lot of actual polymaths out there today, but he's like a successful biotech or pharmaceutical CEO, and he's done all kinds of crazy stuff. And he just sits here and he does all this math for fun. This is just like what he gets up in the morning and he just sits down and he figured out this relationship with all the pyramids, with Metatron's cube and everything, just from sitting here with this app that he's using and just playing around. And, let's, do a circle here. Okay, put a square here. And then let's take the half base of this thing here. Just like he just plays around with it. But he has a really good intuitive understanding of how these different shapes and everything relate to one another. So he's kind of just like a casual mathematician, while also being a pharmaceutical CEO and building his own apps and creating his own forms of cryptography and writing peer-reviewed math papers, discovering new kinds of numbers. And like, it's the guy he's mind-blowing.
You take all this in because it's a lot to take in.
I think you're right.
And then we can we'll schedule another time to do. I wanted to take you through some of this so that and I'd love for you to work with us on it, because I think you bring expertise that nobody else. Divide masculine, divide feminine.
Here it is.
That's a beauty.
Well, that's backwards, but you can see.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are no coincidences.
No, there apparently not. Let's see if I've got this here. Handy. Yeah. Let's see. This is a lot of this stuff. I'm gonna. Oh, I have to upload. Yeah, that's what I thought. Let's try.
And then you have to click on the screen. You just select that. I can. Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and here's the colors, the frequencies of the colors, how those ratios line up with the geometry. Then the platonic solids with the numbers of the angles of the faces, and then your astrological time cycles. And let's see what else here have I got here. Okay, so then this one here. You can see all the numbers. Now these are idealized numbers, but they're all here. There's the 4320. Yep. If I keep going here, let's see. I should have 43,200 miles radius of the sun.
Exactly.
2,160 miles radius of the moon. Then the Earth numbers here, which so essentially the Earth's diameter goes from 7926 roughly at the equator to 7,900 at the poles.
Yeah, and it comes out to roughly 7915 or 7920.
79. If you take the Earth is an oblate spheroid.
Yep.
But if you take a perfect sphere with the same surface area as the Earth's oblate spheroid, it comes out to virtually 7920.
Yep.
So in other words, create an idealized spherical Earth, and it's going to be right at 7920. And then, here's the diatonic scale with the numbers. And then I get into the cycles of global change and the rhythms of the change, which are very interesting and seem to correspond roughly, but pretty precisely, actually. And you figure, okay, the way I look at it is you have an idealized template, just like any architect works from a set of blueprints, right? And everything is idealized on those set of blueprints. Now, when you translate from a conception,
adjustments,
to a blueprint, then to the real tangible three-dimensional material manifestation of that, you're going to get some slight variation.
Yeah.
And that variation, more or less, is the measure of the degree of craftsmanship applied to the project, right? So that's my way of looking, okay, if we look at the solar system, we find, okay, you can argue that maybe the moon isn't exactly 2160, but that's not the point. They completely miss the point.
Yep.
And actually, because the moon is somewhat of a distended shape, just like the Earth in its own way, you can actually find a diameter of the Earth that is 7,920. And it actually, interestingly, comes very close to the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. If you slice that diameter line through the Earth at the tropics, it comes out very, very close to 7920.
That's very similar. I've done very similar work. In fact, I took the square and circle of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man and then inscribed squares and circles within those, and I found every planet in the solar system proportion fits into the circles that inscribe within the squares.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's like, I'll show it to you in a second. It's mind blowing.
I'll do my my Vitruvian Man thing I did a few years ago. Are you seeing this?
Yes, I'm not seeing Vitruvian Man. I'm seeing a bunch of large boulders.
Oh, okay. Okay, so let's see. Then I guess it's a little bit different than sharing on Zoom. So let's see if I minimize share. There we go.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah, let me.
The hexapentacus.
So this is based upon the integration of the pentagon and the hexagon.
Yep, this is the Dürer method.
Yep.
The Albrecht Dürer method.
Yep. And interesting, I find that to be a key geometry throughout.
this relationship here, this the pentagon and the hexagon together, this is a structure that's found in human DNA. I think the last thing in here is Robert Edward Grant talking about the relationships of all the planets in the solar system and how he derived those from the Vitruvian Man.
DNA.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the
DNA.
nucleotide pairing. Mhm.
Yeah, right there. It's DNA.
That's beautiful. That's really cool. So let me show you what I found on. I work with this guy named Alan Green,
I know that name.
and Alan has been the fellow that decrypted Shakespeare's works.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's where I would have heard it. Yeah.
And together we did Da Vinci's works, and we've done it on many of his paintings. But I'll show you this right here. Here we go. Screen again. Okay, entire screen.
One of the things that he's done with Da Vinci's stuff is the Last Supper. Da Vinci's painting of the Last Supper is actually a model of the King's Chamber at the pyramid, and there's all sorts of little Easter eggs in there.
There we go. Share. Okay, so you should see this now.
Yep.
All right. So let's see.
Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man has mystified mankind for centuries. The position of his circle
Can we get a little more
does
volume?
not match the
Sure. Let me see.
Right here.
way of squaring the circle.
Let me see if I can. Why is it not getting loud for you? So you want more volume? Okay. Here we go. The circle.
Yep.
Right. We can find and do a little bit more investigation as to what was going on. Why did he choose this square and that circle? By the way, the square has an area of the Euler number.
Okay.
The circle has an area.
So one thing is, a lot of people have mathematicians and stuff have made fun of Da Vinci for a long time because he didn't properly square the circle in his the way he laid out the square and the circle on his Vitruvian Man, but he actually did much more than that. Which one of the things is he said here the square of the square on Vitruvian Man is the Euler number, and the Euler number was not discovered until Leonard Euler in like the 1800s. But the square of Da Vinci's square on the square of Da Vinci's square on the Vitruvian Man is the Euler number, that was yet to be discovered for 200 years.
Of pi. 200 years before the Euler number was discovered.
Okay.
So nobody knew he was actually squaring the circle, but understanding the transition between scalar waves, which requires sexagesimal math, and transverse waves of light. So gravity and time, light, energy. So he understood this, and that's how light is made. It's again, the Euler number is related to Euler to the power of pi. These are like super advanced principles that he encrypted. And so what we did is we started looking. You may be interested to know that in Da Vinci's actual drawing, the diameter of the circle was 8.64 inches.
In Da Vinci's original drawing?
In Da Vinci's original drawing, the measurement of the circle's diameter for a circle and square is 8.64 inches. Which is like, wow, that's pretty amazing. Wow. So then we found that we could put the sun right inside that. 8.64 inches. So then we extend this analysis a little bit further. That's the diameter of the circle. So then we have Saturn, which would be 7.236 inches approximately. And look where that fits, right inside the square, almost perfectly. And because it's oblate, you get the averages, and it works perfectly. You have to take the polar circumference and the equatorial. So then you just extend the squares and circles within each other, and let's see what else we can find. We already found the sun.
Real quick, look at the animation of this. What does it look like?
You get the averages, and it works perfectly. You have to take the polar circumference and the equatorial.
This looks like you're looking down the middle of a vortex, doesn't it? Like you're walking down a hallway, sort of. If you imagine this as like swirling down to the center.
So then you just extend the squares and circles within each other, and let's see what else we can find. We already found the sun and Saturn. The center circle is root 2. And these are all root 2 relationships of each other. So each one of these is defining what the diameters would be for each of these, circles and squares as well. And then we can compare it against all the planets.
Okay, I have something to say. Again, speaking to our flat earther friends, I want to believe. But okay, one thing you're going to have to explain to me is the wobble. What are people saying if there is no wobble? Another thing is, how are the dimensions of the Earth encoded in the pyramid?
Right.
If it's not a globe Earth, yet we have the dimensions of a globe Earth encoded into the pyramid. Furthermore, all of this math not only gives you the dimensions of the Earth, but of all of the planets.
Uh-huh. Now, if the planets themselves are like products of somoluminescence, this would almost lend even more credence to that idea to me, because then what you're saying is that what we see as planets are actually like an electromagnetic phenomenon from like water under pressure, as I understand it, at least. So then it would make sense that they're like, so what we're seeing when we see the planets is we're seeing the product of certain frequencies applied to water with certain amount of pressure or whatever. And so if these sorts of measurements, if these sorts of ratios and dimensions and stuff are something that's innate to the structure of reality, that there's a pattern, there are cosmic patterns to creation, then yeah, on a flat Earth with like the dome above you and there's a firmament out there, and somehow the electromagnetic impulses or whatever are causing these somoluminescent phenomena, then they would have these sorts of ratios expressed in them. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I guess after a fashion, but I guess what I don't understand about the somoluminescence, and I don't know nearly enough about this to be able to talk and not sound like a moron, is at least the examples I've seen of that phenomenon is that they're temporary phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Right.
These are all constant.
Right. Yeah. So it would imply that there's some kind of a force or something that's causing that to constantly be manifested in a certain way. And I'm not completely sold on the somoluminescence thing, and that could also be that its stars are that stars and planets are something different. We've got a $10 super chat from Seasider. Thank you very much. He says, "I'm so triggered right now. You're a bunch of science enablers." Yep. That actually reminds me of something I wanted to say, was that this is the sort of shit that I want to see people spending their time thinking. Like, we need to redeem science. Science has been, what we call science, like capital S science today, is very fake and gay.
Yeah, for real, guys. I'm getting tired of like the Jew posting and stuff. Can you like talk about this?
Yeah. Can we bring back science? Like can we actually get some based scientists who are trying to understand the patterns in the universe and actually believe that there might still be stuff to be discovered, rather than this sort of just latent assumption that it's all out there now. We're just at the apotheosis of human experience and there's nothing new to be discovered. Fucking bullshit. There's so much cool shit out there. I'm too dumb to find it all, but if you guys find it and bring it to me, I'll show it to other people.
Yeah, I mean, like, the field of physics has basically,
atrophied,
stalled out and atrophied. Like 50 years ago or something, there hasn't been any major significant discoveries in physics. So go back to first principles, see where they went wrong, and chart a new course.
Hell yeah.
Come up with some new shit.
And like, imagine so take the doomer cynicism, right, conspiracy brain, and imagine like this thunderstorm generator technology.
But Matt, this stuff's all Kabbalah. So
right, yeah. So imagine you have this thunderstorm generator technology, and imagine that it's mass produced, and all the what do you call it? All the internal combustion engines, all the fossil fuel operated engines in the world are all now running with using this super cheap, easily retrofitted technology that like triples efficiency while also eliminating all emissions. Imagine that sort of thing being applied and the effects that would have, even over the course of like 10 years. You could. This is why every single generation thinks that they're living at the end of time, and they can't imagine how, there's all these terrible things that are happening and there's no way that they could ever be fixed. And
if that like thunderstorm generator technology stuff is legit, like it's totally plausible that in the next 10, 20 years, energy is not a problem anymore.
Right.
Climate fanaticism has just disappeared.
Right.
I mean, if the powers that be will allow it, but I have reason to believe that, they're kind of on their way out right now.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I mean, like, even if they don't allow 100% of it and they only allow 40% of it or whatever, it's still a massive improvement. And all of a sudden, all of these systems that you perceived as being completely maxed out, there's like all of this rigidity and all of this corruption and all of these destructive cycles and patterns that just seem like they're going to spiral their way into complete catastrophe. All of a sudden, everything gets redirected. And this is the story of humanity. Every single generation thinks that they're all cynical about, oh, everything's going to suck and we're all going to die and burn. There's never going to be anything beyond us. And somehow the human species just keeps trudging along. So yeah, if you look around right now, oh man, it sure seems like things just can't continue this way. Well, yeah, they can't, which means they're not going to, because time is going to continue. We're going to keep on plugging along. We're going to have children. There's going to be future generations. Those future generations are going to do something. So why not take all of that energy and dedicate it toward accepting the world as it is right now for what it is and starting to solve these problems rather than just sit around bitching and moaning about them?
You know, it's crazy, Matt.
What?
Under the conventional dating methods and historical narrative that we are taught, somehow the ancients knew all this shit but didn't invent the fucking wheel.
Right. Yeah.
Give me a break.
Oh man, just wait till we do an episode talking to you guys about the vases. The massively sophisticated vases that are like, they're made out of some of the hardest materials in the world, like the hardest materials in the world short of diamonds. They're carved out of it and they're symmetrical to like the thousandth of an inch. And they supposedly are 10, 15,000 years old. So we have these vases that are produced that we probably couldn't produce today just because of the cost that it would require and the fact that nobody would actually foot that bill because it's so massively sophisticated and time consuming and resource consuming. And here
Just
they
vases.
Yeah, just to make a vase, like, oh, maybe it's a tool, who knows? But they make these vases, they mass produce these vases. So not only are they able to produce things at a mass level of precision and specificity, they're able to mass produce them. And they're carving these out of, they're perfectly like geometrically mirrors of themselves, and every single ratio is embedded in them, and they're like, we don't even know what sort of technology it would take to build something like that. Even today, it would have to be some sort of really like fancy laser etching thing that's like, the levels of imperfection in the vases are at the level where they can't tell if the imperfection is in the vase or in the software that they're using to analyze the vase. And supposedly this was produced by people at a time when, we hadn't even discovered the wheel yet.
Yeah, using like digging up clay and using like copper and rocks to
Right.
Beat it together.
Yeah.
Rolling around in shit.
Uh-huh. All right, I got to get wrapped up here shortly, but I want to finish this segment on the planets.
So start with the sun. So that's a perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
8.64 inches diameter. Jupiter would be 0.864 comparatively, but it's just an order of magnitude. Saturn fits inside the square. Uranus fits in that circle and square relationship. Neptune does as well. And you can see these are all really, really close, like 99.9 or 99.7% accuracies. But if you actually use the average of equatorial and polar circumference, they're perfect. Just like the moon. There's your 216.
Mm-hmm.
And Pluto. So the only one that's missing is Venus.
Even Pluto.
It's interesting.
But it's actually not so missing because it's slightly larger than that circle, right? And square relationship. But it is a root 2 relationship versus the other internal square that went with the dotted line. So we take that, area of the square, area of the circle for that square, or this would be the Venus square is 0.841. It's sine 1 radians. And this comes out then to give us as well Earth, 7920. And that relationship is again a root 2 relationship against Venus.
Uh-huh.
So you can see that outer square.
Yep.
7.92 inches. And then how does that relate against Venus? 7.52. Area of the square. Area of circle. Root 2.
Uh-huh.
So then you've got all the planets matching this same convention. I'll send you that video so you can, as part of your,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah. So, you know, the last thing I wanted to show you, which I think is most relevant to our conversation and timely, is this. So this is the King's Chamber.
Right.
Oh, this is one other good thing we got.
And just like your chart of the zodiac, we've got on the north wall where the bull of the cow are.
Yep.
Right. And Orion, Taurus. So then you have Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, etc., Libra, and so on. The west wall of the King's Chamber, the Egyptians, they didn't die. They went to the west. They were westing. So this is where the sarcophagus is right now, but we know it was moved from its original position.
That's interesting there, that the little nugget, the Egyptians didn't die, they wested. Like linguistically, that's what they would have said. Oh, he wested.
If you look at the Orion constellation, it roughly also has the same proportions, right, as the 2-to-1 relationship of the King's Chamber. And when we do that, the sarcophagus is exactly the right size to encompass the 3 belt stars of Orion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a story of Orion going through the precession of equinox.
Mm-hmm.
And every 6,000 years, and the reason I say 6,000, there's a long cycle and there's a short cycle of the precession. The long cycle is 25,920 basis, which then it's half of it is 12,960.
Right.
The short cycle, as we increase our gravitational pull and velocity, like 2 stars that have a slingshot, ends up being 11,040 years. The total then comes out to 24,000, and that matches the logarithmic base value of a mod 24. So it's like 2 right triangles. It's like a pendulum swinging.
Mm.
Now, what I estimate is that the last time we had a pole shift would have been about 6,000 years ago. So about 4,461 BC would have been when we shifted to Polaris. Before that, it was in Thuban. So that would have happened where these red lines go across right here.
Mm-hmm.
So in Thuban, we were in Dracos, and that would have been 10,931 BC. So about 13,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got Vega that would have been in Lyra, right? And all of those constellations are on the north wall because those, of course, would be representing the North Star shifting. So it's like Orion is going through when he's sideways and then standing straight up and then on his side and upside down. When Orion's upside down, it seems like we're in lost history. We're in a bad place, right? We lose the history. We have a pole shift. And along with the pole shift usually is accompanied some sort of cataclysmic asteroid or comet and then a deluge, which sort of like cleans the set.
Well, let me show you one last image here that you'll find interesting, I think. So I will do a share screen.
Perfect. I see it.
Now let me go to the presentation mode. Okay. So there you see the green dots.
Yep.
Okay, so what I've done going through the geological record, I've plotted all of the events to their dates typically are within a century. And I think you'll see some clustering happen. Now, of course, I'm sure this is far from complete. But interestingly, look at this axis that we're on now.
Yep.
The Aquarian, from the cusp of Virgo Leo to the cusp of Pisces Aquarius really seems to have a bunch of events clustered along that axis.
Yep.
We had major events at 4320 years ago, a major event at 6480. We had a major event at 8640. And all of these are the round numbers, but they're all within it from a few decades.
So that would be 6480 years ago, or is it?
Years ago, yes.
Okay, so that's pretty close. I had 4468 BC.
Yeah.
Which would be 6470.
So that 10 years off. And like I said, these numbers here, they're not necessarily going to be exactly precise, but they're all going to be within from a decade or two up to maybe at the most a century or two variance from the dates that are given in the literature.
So then the date that I had for the Thuban pole shift in Dracos would have been 10,931 BC, or about 12,900 years ago.
Right, and then so you've got 12,900. We've got
so that's pretty close.
Yeah. So what happens? 12,960. If you go times 3, which would give you a date of 12,960 times 3 will give you 38,880 years. So there was a Heinrich event, and that was Heinrich event 4. And then we have Heinrich event, and Heinrich events, are discontinuities within the record, the depositional record of sea cores. So in other words, typically you will have marley type, very fine grained sediment from all of the little benthic and planktonic creatures that are living within the water column that build their shells out of calcium carbonate. They die, they settle down, and it forms this fine-grained layer. But that is regularly interrupted by coarse, gravelly layers, and those coarse, gravelly layers are typically terrestrial in origin. So you've got gravels, like particularly they're prominent in the Atlantic, because what that means is you've got a major discharge, a disgorging of ice from the ice sheets. Now, the ice, as it's expanding across the continental landmass, it's entraining, picking up and entraining, terrigenous material from the continents. So now, when these ice breakdowns, these destructions of the ice sheet occur, it disgorges thousands of icebergs into the ocean. Those icebergs, as they drift south, they begin to melt, and when they melt, their cargo of coarse terrigenous material then drops to the floor of the ocean, and it makes a very distinct layer. And those layers can be dated. And so when you see the Heinrich events here, these Heinrich events, so Heinrich event 4, there was a coarse layer of terrigenous sediment at 3 times 12,960, or a cycle and a half ago, which is 38,880 years. And again, no, the dating is within from a few decades to a few centuries. So right on that cusp, you had 3 major Heinrich events that occurred. So what's the explanation for Heinrich event? It's pretty vague so far in the literature. All that we can say is that, yeah, something causes a massive destruction of the ice sheets. And as a result of that massive destruction and that melting, you have this large volumes of meltwater carrying thousands of icebergs into the oceans, primarily the North Atlantic, because North Atlantic is being fed by Laurentide ice sheet, Fennoscandian ice sheet, and the Greenland ice sheet. And apparently, those ice sheets are undergoing catastrophic destruction simultaneously. They disgorge into the Northern Atlantic, they melt, and they create these Heinrich layers, and those Heinrich layers can be dated. So those are some of the things that I've plotted on this chart here. And look, termination of Heinrich event number 2 occurred 23,760 years ago. And at, if we go here, onset of the late glacial, Wisconsin glacial state usually is dated 26 to 27,000 years ago. What happens though is, if you have a transition from an interglacial climate to a full glacial climate, there's going to be a lag period, obviously, between that time and you get massive ice sheet growth, right? So the climate shifts apparently in a split second, in a geological eye blink. Typically, from what we know of the Younger Dryas, these climate shifts between glacial and interglacial can occur in less than 3 years. What causes that? Still an open question. Comets, asteroid impacts, to me, are the most likely. But the thing is that when you have a great impact or series of impact type events, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that there's an endogenic response to that, primarily in enhanced volcanism and enhanced seismicity. So then that would create a series of feedbacks that would then amplify the original catastrophic trigger event, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think that, one of the things that I keep coming back to is this whole Apophis. Yeah. And, I think that it's going to, that period of time that goes all the way, I think it swings back around again in 2036. Right? I
believe that's right. Yeah. So the question then becomes, how much will its orbit be perturbed in the 2029 close encounter?
2029. Mm-hmm. So I think that what we're dealing with here and why the King's Chamber has long walls, like 2-to-1 ratio, is because of this formation of those stars, right? And their proportion that they have, which is also 2-to-1. It's also matching Orion going through the constellations and the story of the hero's journey. And you have the sarcophagus that should be at the center of the room, because that actually is what houses the solar plexus. And if you look at Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, you'll notice that on the Vitruvian Man as well, there's actually 3, I'll show you this. Here we go. The Vitruvian Man also has 3 diamonds on his solar plexus. And those 3 diamonds are exactly the position of the 3 pyramids of Giza, which is another kind of mind-boggler, right? So first of all, this is an old astrology kind of orrery globe that I have. And I looked at it, I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. It's kind of remarkably close to the King's Chamber proportions as well. And then I measured to see if the 3 stars of the belt stars actually fit inside the sarcophagus perfectly, and they do. To this, and then if you look at Vitruvian Man, right, there is another relationship that we can find where Vitruvian Man has on his, let me see, I can pull this up here. Before I do that, I'll just show you this real quick. Okay. So this is one of the petroglyphs on the walls. And you can see here a woman, right, riding this horse with her hand out like this, and her head, you'll see it here pretty close. So I can trace it using AI. And this is Delphinus. And you can see the arrowhead right there as well, riding the Pegasus. And this is from the actual King's Chamber wall, filming it. And then from this, we see the Aquila, which is also in Capricorn, and they're all next to each other in the zodiac. And so if this was true, then we realized that next to the Aquila should be a fish. right above its wing. And guess what? There's a vesica right on that wall. You can see a fish right here. It's like an eye shaped. See if I can bring it down a little bit with a tail. Here. And so the winged horse is Pegasus right here. The Piscis austrinus is right above the wing of the Aquila. The Delphinus is the woman. The Aquila is the bird. The Sagitta right next to it. These are exactly the deacon of astrology. So I think they're telling us something about obviously these, constellations, etc. But I'll show you this one last thing. So I think we're definitely on the same hunt here.
It would appear so.
That's definitely what it's feeling like. So same image that I just showed you. The bull and the cow is like the strangest stomach of all time. Look at that. 3 diamond shapes.
Oh, yeah. Huh, look at that.
Can you believe that? And it's literally Orion's belt, and then you got the Sphinx right in front of it.
What was that Da Vinci up to?
Well, he worked for the Sultan of Cairo.
Okay.
We do know that now. And look at that. Look at that.
Huh.
So, here it is. It's all hidden in plain sight. I think what we're living in is a simulation that goes through cycles. And it's all part of how consciousness evolves. So it's not a bad thing that we're going to go through another catastrophic experience. It's just part of the cycle.
Oh.
And I believe that there needs to be, the reason why people like you and I are getting this information is because, there's part of it that has to survive through. And we've got to somehow get this information out. I don't know if you saw that movie, Don't Look Up, but sometimes I feel like that because I feel like something's definitely coming.
Okay. I got to get wrapped up here. One thing I wanted to say was it's interesting that about 6,500 years ago is when one of these large events happened, and it maps onto the 6480 as one of the quarters of the great cosmic clock, and then or the great cosmic year, and that's like what the young Earth creationist, all the the recorded history, everything seems to kind of go back to that point. Like beyond 6,500 years, everything gets really murky. Well, that makes sense if there was some kind of catastrophic event. Kate said, I wonder, does the Bible ever reference God making the world cold or filled with ice? I don't remember reading that in Genesis, but would be interested to know if that's referenced at all. So what I've come to understand from listening to Randall and other people like him is that the Ice Age doesn't mean a time when the entire world was covered in ice. The Ice Age is actually, it just has to do with the relative amount of ice on the planet. So, okay, assuming it's a globe, just for the sake of talking about it quickly, you have right now ice covers, X amount of coming down from the poles. It covers X amount. And in times past, those glaciers extended down much further. So more of the world was covered in ice. There was still parts of the world that were tropical, and the Sahara Desert looks like it was probably like a rainforest, and so there was still the Ice Age wasn't icy all over the entire planet, and we're actually relatively speaking, we're still coming out of the Ice Age. We're still kind of gradually beginning to warm, and it's interesting that warming on the planet is associated with increased growth, increased life, all good stuff, and cooling on the planet is associated with the bad stuff. Cooling is associated with catastrophes and apocalypses and the loss of land masses and that sort of thing. What's that? Plagues, yeah, all those things. So warming is actually probably a good thing. It's associated with good things. The other idea too is that there's a pole shift that happens every so often, which means that what we know as the North Pole wasn't always on the North Pole. That the Earth's crust can shift and move around. And I don't know if I completely buy it. It's kind of an interesting thought. The magnetic North Pole is absolutely moving. It's moving at 50 feet a day or something like that. And it's moving from, assuming a globe, it's moving from where it used to be down toward the toward the equator. So then this is associated with it fucks with compasses and it's the magnetic North Pole that's moving.
So is the pole shift the idea that the crust shifts, or is it that the North Pole and the South Pole, like the magnetic North Pole and South Pole, like you're saying, comes down and then they shift?
Both. Those are both like
Okay.
separate theories. That one of them says that when the magnetic North Pole shifts, that it's so disruptive that it basically, if you imagine kind of like the skin on an orange, and you imagine if the skin on the orange could rotate around the fruit inside, that would be like the Earth's crust shifting around its core. Now,
That feels like bullshit.
I think
I'd buy the magnetic one. That makes sense to me.
yeah, I think the magnetic one isn't theoretical. I think it's like it actually happens, and then the question is what is the effect of it happening? And so the idea is that basically you get the ice accumulates on the poles to the point where it weighs so much that it eventually causes like massive tectonic movement where it snaps, and then the water sloshing all over the place, and it causes earthquakes and volcanoes and all kinds of crazy tornadoes and all this sort of stuff. But of course, if we're not on a globe, if we're on a disc that is in the middle of this vortex, then that makes everything. I have no idea. I'm back to ground zero. Anyways, appreciate you guys hanging out here. Another nice long stream. We've got 25 viewers and 24 likes right now. You guys have done great. So Taylor Brown says, here's a reminder to join the Discord for more great mind-blowing acid trips. Hashtag Kingpilled Hype Man. Yes, please do join the Kingpilled Discord, kingpilled.com. We'd love to have you in there. And please like the stream, share it, interact with it, give us a comment for the algorithm. And you can follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. And we will catch you again sometime soon. You got anything else to say, Cooper?